Okay, it's Nick Evans here. I'm not seeing the chair, Andy Ferguson, in, so I don't know if you wish to take the chair, Councillor Martin, until Andy arrives.
That's fine, Nick. Andy gets here. Yeah, no. Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Communities Committee, which is being live streamed and recorded. The recording will be made available on the Council website for public listening. Could I remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting the microphones and switching off their video when you're not addressing the meeting. Should you wish to contribute to any item, you should write "Speak" in the Teams chat function, and you will be invited to speak in order about new issues. Should your question or issue be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request so that we can deal with the business as efficiently as possible. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time, or you could write "leave" in the Teams chat function and then join. This will allow us to monitor member presence. Nick, can you provide the header indicating who is participating remotely and any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. I see that Councillor Ferguson has joined the meeting now, so you'll be pleased to note he can take over once we've dealt with this matter. Obviously, all members are participating remotely. The only members I haven't seen join the meeting at this point are Councillors Ronnie, Tate, Wilson and Wood, but they may, unless anyone says any different, and they've joined the meeting since I've just put the list together, that's where we are currently.
I'm in now, Nick. Councillor Tate.
I'll just finish the one. I confirm my agreement to the participation of members named as participating remotely. Note to supplement reports to agenda. If we have not dealt with all of the business by 1 p.m, it would be my intention to have a 30-minute lunch break at around this time. I'll let Councillor Ferguson, Chair, take over now. Item 2.
Thanks very much, John, for stepping in. Connection problems as always, so apologies. Declarations of interest. Have any members with any declaration of interest? Rob.
Thank you, Chairman. With regard to item 11, the Dumfries and Galloway Region-wide Coastal Benefit Fund, from memory, the first application from the Birchfield Players. My daughter is a member of the Birchfield Players. As we're being asked to approve the applications today, I won't take part on that basis. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Dougie?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Same item, Coastal Benefits Fund. There's one award funding that relates to Gatehouse Community Centre. It's just to declare that I've been invited to chair that group, but I haven't taken up that position. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. So then we go to item 3, the minute, the last of the meeting of the 9th of February. This minute is for noting. Be happy to note.
Happy to note.
Thank you. In that case, then we'll move on to item number 4, the Welfare and Benefits COVID Impact Report. Provides members with an update on the impact of COVID-19 on welfare and benefit services and other associated services. I've got Lorna Campbell and Paula Doherty are available to take any questions via Teams. Lorna, Paula, have you anything you want to add to the report, or are you quite happy to go straight to questions?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, just a couple of verbal updates to the report regarding year-end spend positions. In relation to recommendation 2.2 and paragraph 342, the final year-end spend for Scottish Welfare Fund was 1,515,265, which leaves 398,000 potentially to be carried forward if agreed by members today. Also in paragraph 351, appendix 5, we set out the discretionary housing payment spend as at the end of February. However, the year-end spend is 1,821,459, which means the full Scottish Government allocation for discretionary housing payments, including the additional 88,000 that was added at the February committee, has now been spent in full. Paragraph 310, we advised that there was £29,000 of the council tax hardship payment had been spent. However, following some intensive work during the latter part of March, we've identified many cases that were in arrears, that had low incomes. Therefore, the allocation of 196,000 has been spent, which is just under the full amount. From the time of finalising the report to the end of the financial year, the services continued to deliver to the most vulnerable, resulting in the total level of financial support increasing to 7,245,311, as opposed to the 6,985,628 currently detailed in recommendation 2.25. And finally, just in paragraph 3.9, we advised that we'd provide a verbal update regarding the low-income pandemic payment of £130 to every household in receipt of council tax reduction and certain exempt households. At the present time, final guidance still hasn't been received from Scottish Government, but initial guidance has suggested that local authorities will be asked to make these payments to eligible households between May and October 2021. Scottish Government so far have suggested that the preferred method of payment is BACS. However, given that we do not hold bank details for the vast majority of the cases, and this will be a significant manual undertaking, one option that is actively being considered is to credit all eligible cases council tax accounts with a payment of £130 and write to customers to offer a refund as an option, or keep it as a credit in their council tax account as a payment. Refunds would predominantly be by cheque, which would remove the need to collect and verify bank details, therefore speeding up the process and getting money to individuals quicker. However, the operational administration of this is still being investigated with finance colleagues, and any final decisions on payment is still subject to the final government guidance from the Scottish Government. Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Lorna, thank you. So that last thing you just touched on, we'll deal with that first. So we will be getting an update to committee on how we're taking this forward. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the next committee is not until June, Chair, and payments are due to start in May. So I'm happy to take guidance from elected members how you want us to do that, given that obviously the first payments are due to start in May.
I think what I was meaning is that if we give you the leeway today to do what is best for the customer, rather than what's best for us, and most sensible, common sense way forward in this, and the most approachable way, whatever you want to call it, and then you'd be reporting back to us retrospectively, yes, what you've done. I think that's what I was getting at. Yeah.
Yes.
So, but with that in mind, thank you very much, the two of you. Just now, any questions for either Lorna or Paula? Doesn't seem to be. I'm just giving people a minute or two to try and get on. Okay, I'm not seeing any requests to speak. No questions for you. Once again, I can only thank you and your team. I can't thank you highly enough, I should say, on the work that you've been doing over this last number of years, but in particular the last year. So if you can convey our thanks to the staff once again for all their efforts and hard work and sacrifices I know they make, because they've been working a lot more than probably they get paid for. So I think on behalf of the committee, if you could pass on those thanks, I'd be really grateful. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Right, so with that then, can we move on to the recommendations? Are we happy to note 2.1? 2.2, noting the different amounts, I should say there. 2.3, agreeing to amend the discretionary housing payment policy to allow one-off payments for rent deposits and rent in advance to allow customers to access the private rental market, set out in paragraph 3.4. Have we agreed on that? And then 2.4, note the delivery of the new low-income pandemic payment, paragraph 3.9. And finally, 2.5, note the total financial support is now over the 7 million mark. I think it's 7.25 million, I think, if I heard you correctly, to vulnerable people during 2021. And clearly, you'll update us on how you're going to take forward this new payment that you just described at the end of your presentation. Are we happy with that? So we're happy to note and agree. Okay, I'll take no comment as agreement. Thank you very much, ladies. Thanks very much for your time. And again, thank the staff for their hard work with you. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item number 5. Tackling poverty and inequalities in Dumfries and Galloway, allocation of policy development funding budget. Report by Community Planning Engagement Manager. The purpose of the report is to agree the allocation of the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities budget for 21-22. Got Mark Malloy online, and I think Liz is there as well, available to take any questions in the report. Right, so Mark, have you any update or anything you'd like to add to the report at this stage?
No, Chair. Happy to go straight to questions.
Right, okay. Anybody got any questions for Mark? I know there's been a question about the £200,000 for participating budgeting. Was there a suggestion about that? Sean, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think we had a discussion, our group, and I think we spoke to Mark about the potential of the 200,000 rather than going to participatory budget and it actually be allocated to area committees on the formula that's usually applied to area committee funding for anti-poverty initiatives in each of the 4 regions.
Just for clarity, I think if I picked you up right, Sean, at the pre-meet, the way the money would be divvied up over the region would be according to the formula we use for area committees, and area committees would oversee the process, but it would still be done under a PB framework. So that there's some sight in it by the area committees. I think that's what you were suggesting.
What we're suggesting, yeah, is it would be on that formula, but it would be up to the area committee to actually allocate that funding based on applications received in.
That defeats the purpose of participatory budgeting. No, what you can do.
That's our option. It was not to go for participatory budgeting this year because of COVID and the resources that would take. And so we felt that this year it should go to area committees and for local groups to apply for funding and for the area committees to determine those applications on that basis.
That's clear in what was discussed at the pre-meeting, Sean. That's a change. John, you want in?
Yeah, what we said at the pre-meeting was that it was still going to participatory budgeting, but it would be up to the area committees to decide how we're going to spend that money. So it's much the same. As I say, it's still got to be used for. It's got to be used for poverty. The poverty. So it's just up to the area committees how they're going to spend it to alleviate the poverty in their area. That was my understanding. What we had said.
That's also my understanding of what we agreed this morning. But clearly, it's a member's decision here. Anyone else want to come in? There's another hand up, but I can't see who it is.
Sorry,
sorry, it's Jane first, and then Ian Blake. I've got Jane, Ian Blake, and then yeah.
Chairman, all I was going to say is that I'm slightly confused. So if we could possibly have a clarification about what is being proposed here. I'm definitely muddled.
Well, my understanding, Jane, is that it'll be up to the area committees to oversee the participatory budgeting process for this £200,000 allocated as per the normal formula for each area committee, so that area members would have an oversight of the PB process in their area. That's my understanding of where we are. Does that help, Jane?
It does. Thank you. Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. Ian Blake?
I'll lower my hand, thanks.
Okay, thanks. John?
Chair, could we ask Mark for his thoughts on it?
Yeah, certainly, yeah. Mark?
Thanks, Chair. What's within the report in front of members is allocating the £200,000 for distribution using a participatory budgeting model. And that 200,000, as it has been in previous years, would be divided across using the existing formula for the 4 area committees. So the 200,000 would be divided across the 4 areas using the existing model and would be fully allocated through the participatory budgeting model.
Yeah, Ian, you want to come in, Ian Crothers?
Please, Chairman. It sounds quite an interesting conversation we're having here. So just for absolute clarity, because I'm looking at the recommendations and we're being asked to agree to the proposed allocation of the tackling poverty, and it refers to paragraph 3.12. But I think what Councillor Marshall putting forward, backed up by Councillor Martin, is a fair proposal in regards to the allocations get signed off by area committees. On the back of what you've just said there, Mark, is that the case? Is that the actual system or process what we've just agreed there, or do we have to come back to the recommendations to make that absolutely clear and stipulate that?
Through yourself, Chair, what's within the report at the moment is that the 200,000 would be distributed using the participatory budgeting model, which, as it currently stands, does not come to area committee for agreement. The concept behind participatory budgeting is that the public vote on how that £200,000 would be allocated, and essentially the projects which receive the most votes then get the funding allocated up to the available funding. So I think that there is a difference there in terms of what some members are saying. So as it stands at the moment, it is allocating it through the participatory budgeting model that does not go to area committee for approval before allocation.
To see that in progress, Chair, if you don't mind. It sounds like a good idea.
Well, if you just hang on a second, Ian, I'll come back in a minute. So, Mark, I think what the gist of this is the area committees should be able to have an influence on what poverty measures they're looking for under PB in their area. I think if that seems to be where this is coming from, rather than taking over the process, because the PB process, absolutely right, is a public vote, and it's what the public want. So, my understanding of what was getting put forward here today would be that £200,000 would be divvied up as per the usual process and for the amounts we use for area committees proportionality. But then the area committees could actually put some form of criteria in there that they might think very relevant for their area. That is, I think, where Sean and John were coming from. I'll obviously no speak for them, but that was my understanding of what they said. Sean?
No, it's kind of not what. Due to our discussions last week as a group, we felt that this year that we shouldn't do the participatory budget and we should allocate it directly to the area committees on the formula basis. And that's just because of COVID and the amount of resources it would require to actually do the PB this year. We felt that, that we would be able to spend that money better if we actually, allocated that to area committees.
Okay, just to send them. Jim Dempster, you want in?
Just to say, Chair, that I kind of agree with that, because I recall the first time PB was introduced, there were arguments that some organisations were canvassing for votes, and they actually skewed how the process worked. And with area committees, you certainly no go at that, and it'd be a combination of both. I don't think there's anything wrong with feeding back to area committees what the PB process did, but area committees this year has been suggested make the determination rather than be delegated.
There's somebody else got a hand up. I can't see who it is.
Is it me, Andy? I had my hand up.
I'm not too sure. It's you, John. Yeah. And do you want to speak? Yeah.
Oh, what I'm saying is, if it goes to area committee, it's as long as it was alleviating poverty. Any applications were alleviating poverty. We didn't want to have it for somebody buying to be able to run a minibus or something. It would need to be to alleviate poverty if it came back to area committee. That was my understanding. Because that's what, as I say, the participatory budgeting has already been agreed.
No, this is the participatory budgeting money that was been agreed by council. This is the participatory budgeting money.
I'm saying, Andy, that's already been agreed.
Yes.
Well, what we're saying is they should go to the area committee to decide how it is spent, rather than going to the vote. Again, it's participatory budget, but you should go to the area committee to decide the applications to alleviate poverty. As long as it's alleviating poverty, to me, it doesn't matter how it goes, and the vote can be good, as Jim says. Then,
just hang on a second. We've got a number of people want to come in, and okay, can we do two things? Like this is a two-step process. We've got at 3:12. We've got a series of recommendations of where the money is to go. Right. The only one we're discussing here is the 200,000 about participatory budgeting. Can we clear the table at this moment in time? And are we agreed on the rest of the proposals in that table at 3:12?
Agreed.
Okay, so we're only talking about the participatory budgeting from here on in. So unless I haven't heard anybody who's saying they don't agree with the rest of the funding allocations. Okay, so Liz, before I let any members in, you're obviously asking if you can come in here to try and clarify something. Could you come in, please? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's, I think, in relation to agenda item 12, which you also have in your agenda, which is about the area committee discretionary budget. And members will be aware from that we're anticipating that the area committees are likely to have around an extra £200,000 in terms of what they have available to distribute this year. So one possible model could be that the area committees are allocated a proportion of that funding, which in the current report that you have at item 5 is about the Communities Committee deciding what happens to that allocation. But you could make that allocation to the area committees, and in looking at that alongside their discretionary budget, they could decide if they would like to have a PB exercise in their locality, or if they would like simply to add that to the grant application process. So that could be one option, that we bring a report to each area committee in May, and it's for area committee to decide how they want to use that, whether it's an application process or a PB mechanism. Thank you.
Okay, so just so that I'm clear, Liz, so the suggestion is that today we could allocate that 200k to the 4 area committees to add to what will be discussed at those area committees.
And for the area committee to decide whether or not they would want to have a PB process for it, or have the usual grant application process for it. But in either way, the money will be used for tackling poverty and inequalities. It's been very clear about that's its purpose. And I think what we're talking about is the decision-making approach. Rather than it being the Communities Committee, it would give the area committees flexibility in how they choose to use it. That's one option.
Okay, so if I pick up your option correctly, before I let members in to speak, what you're saying is we can delegate the 200k today to the area committees to take forward with ring fence. That is for anti-poverty funds. It's not for other things. Yeah. Okay. Does that? Okay. That we'll keep that suggestion on hold just now, and I'll let some members in now. Okay. Now forgive me here because this is where it gets difficult. I think I've got Jane first, then Rob. And then Dougie Campbell, then Ian Blake, I think in that order. Yeah.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Andy. Well, I think Liz has just actually put forward a good suggestion, and I would be quite happy to go along with that. My question actually at the time was, is there any suggestion that there is difficulty in going through the PB process? Is there indication that that will be hard to achieve?
I'll leave that to an officer to answer. Liz, you're muted, Liz.
Yeah. Do you want me to come in, Chair?
Yes, please.
If that's okay. In that, certainly we've got an established mechanism and process for going through the PB process, and we've got appropriate resource through our Tackling Poverty and Inequalities team to be able to deliver on that process. And we have also importantly got the involvement of adults with lived experience of poverty who are involved in helping to shape that. So we would be using the existing process that we have used for the last 3 or 4 years, which would allow us to deliver PB process. The only element of that we're not able to deliver is the in-person voting events, because we'd have moved, but due to COVID, to online voting. But that actually last year seen an increase in the number of people voting than it did the year before when it was in person only.
Okay, Jane.
Rob?
Thanks, Jane. Yeah, Rob.
Thanks, Andy. Yes, I think that Lizzie's suggestion is a good one. Allowing area committees to determine the best way forward so far as they see appropriate to their communities and based on their knowledge of the situation, I think is probably a good idea. I think that I will just observe, however, that we would not, I think, want, neither would I support, a longer term initiative to unpick the principles of participatory budgeting, which I certainly believe are perfectly sound. We have not been doing it that long. We have learned a great deal over the course of the time that we have been undertaking these exercises. I remember vividly when we were still allowed to do in-person events for Challenge Poverty Week, for example, members of the Tackling Poverty Reference Group reflecting to me about their support for and interest in participatory budgeting and the extent to which they considered it to be a positive development and the right way forward. And I think that's worth bearing in mind in the context of this piece of work. However, I do recognise, even though the arguments have been advanced very late in the day, that there is probably a degree of pressure across the piece. And on that basis, I think for this year, Lizzie's suggestion is a good way forward. But I don't, for my part, wish to see that necessarily repeated in the future. I think we had hit upon a good way of doing this, and we were starting to work it into something quite positive. And as things return to normal, I would expect us to return to that sort of way of distributing this funding in due course. However, recognise that we are where we are. As you know, I'm very fond of saying, Chairman, and I think this is a good way forward for the time being. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Dougie?
Thank you, Chair. And just following on from that, I think it's helpful, the sort of input we've had from Liz, but my question is around the legality of what has been proposed. My understanding is that participatory budgeting is a legal requirement, and the whole ethos behind it is that communities decide how money is spent to tackle poverty. Now, if this 200k is split between area committees, and we give the scope for individual area committees to decide where that money is allocated, rather than communities having the opportunity to bid for that a portion of that money, are we still within the legal requirements? I'm sorry, I can't remember the full title of the legislation, but is what the way the discussion is going here, which wasn't perhaps reflected previously, but are we legally able to do what is being proposed?
I'll let Liz come in a minute.
Yes,
She's nodding. But my understanding, what Liz said was we would defer the money from here, or delegate the money from your area committees to put their priorities on for a PB exercise in those areas. That's my understanding of what Liz was getting at. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. The requirement for community empowerment is indeed a statutory requirement, but there are a number of ways in which public bodies can deliver that, and participatory budgeting in itself is not a legal requirement as yet. There's certainly encouragement from the Scottish Government for councils particularly to achieve 1% of their revenue budget that is decided by PB. So this council agreed a participatory budgeting framework, and that is open to any committee, indeed perhaps budgets that are delegated to managers as well. It could be determined by PB. It's simply a different decision-making route. So the framework that this committee agreed gives the members the authority to decide the purpose of the funding, and also that there's a steering group set up which has appropriate representation from the council on it, as well as the relevant stakeholders. So for the past number of years, where we have allocated some of the anti-poverty budget for this purpose, the Chair and Vice Chair of Communities Committee have been members, and representatives of our Tackling Poverty Reference Group have made up the steering group, along with some other partners depending on its purpose. So our framework very much gives control of the purpose of the funding to elected members. And I think that's where, you know, it would be appropriate, I think, given the change in the discretionary budget for area committees, for you to be able to look at it as a whole in your area committees. And if PB isn't felt to be the right route this particular year, that would be something for the area committee to decide when it's looking at its requirements over the 2021-22. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Yes, quickly, Dougie. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for that, Liz. That's really helpful. So I think potentially what we're going to have here is the 4 localities deciding in different ways to utilise their portion of the 200k. I certainly think from my own perspective that community involvement in deciding how that money is distributed is really important, and it's the ethos of what I understand. However, that's a discussion for area committee. So thanks, Chair, for letting me back in.
Yeah, I agree. Now I've got 3 speakers still to come in. I've got Ian Blake, Adam, and then Ian Carruthers. Ian Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate what Liz was saying and understand the sentiment behind it, but I still feel that there are a lot of merit in what Sean said about making it a clean cut, putting it to area committees this year. If nothing else, because of the COVID position, it would show our leadership of the COVID position. I think if you do leave it up to area committees to make the decision whether or not it goes through a PB route this particular year or an area committee decision, I think that tend to lead to confusion throughout the region, and also possibly inequality throughout the region. I feel this year in particular, and I agree with what Rob was saying, I think I wouldn't like to see it staying in forevermore. But I think this year the circumstances are exceptional, and I would certainly support Sean and making the clean cut and making it the decision of the area committees this year. Thank you.
Okay, Ian, thanks for that. Adam?
I think, to be honest, I'm coming in agreement with what other people have said. I think there is a need to actually get this money out, if that's what area committees feel, as quickly as possible. And we are in unprecedented circumstances, and there's a number of third sector organisations in particular who do have funding concerns, quite immediate funding concerns, and you know, for all we know, getting this money out sooner rather than later could just be a lifeline for them at this time. and continue that important work. So I would be quite supportive of what Liz has said. I think what would be quite handy is don't mind admitting it, I'm not fully sold on how PB is working in practice. I agree with the values. I think that the values and principles are very good. But I can't recall that we've actually considered an evaluation of the PB process from the financial year that's just finished. So it would probably be quite good to also consider that in due course, because obviously that I appreciate not all members will agree with me on that, but I'm sure we all agree on making it as good as possible, and that is certainly something that we can do ahead of considering how to allocate our tackling poverty money this time next year.
Thanks, Adam. We normally get a report on the performance of PB, not immediately at the end of the financial year, because some of the projects are just winding up now. Usually, I think early summer, if I remember Liz last time we got it. But your point's well made, Adam. And finally, Ian Carruthers, and then we'll try and find a solution for this.
Thanks, Chair. So just rather than repeat what everybody said, it sounds like at 2.1 it'll be members that were agreeing to the proposed allocations as per paragraph 3.12, but without the allocation of the second last allocation, which is poverty and inequalities projects, and a 2.2 I would imagine will be saying that we're agreeing to allocate that to the committees and in the same proportionate basis as outlined as Liz already said in item number 12 or something like that. I just would like to understand exactly what we're agreeing, how we've got to word that up in the recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
I've just got to ask Liz to maybe come in and for clarity help me here, because I'm seeking advice whether at the boxes in 312, if we amend the box to say poverty and inequalities projects decided via area committees, 200,000 is suffice.
I think that's absolutely right, Chair. I think what you're saying is poverty and inequalities projects, and it's an allocation to the area committees. And then when we bring that report to area committees in May time, one of the issues that the area committees may wish to consider is if they would like to use that funding for a participatory budgeting approach. But I think for the decision today is that it's allocated to area committees.
Sean, final word.
Yeah, I'm happy with what Liz is proposing there. I do think, and I think Rob's made the point, and Ian and a few others, that we really need. This is a different year this year, you know, and there's been a lot of kind of redeployment within the council, and so, you know, I think it's right if you're happy to give it to area committees to decide on PB or whether they need to do that or whether they could take the decision themselves. I'm quite comfortable with that, but I do think we need to get the money out quickly, and the only way we can do that, I think, this year is to maybe not go down the route that we were doing with the PB. But I can leave that to area committees. But
yeah, okay. So I'll move to recommendations then. So the recommendation, we're asked to agree to the proposed allocations of the tackling poverty and inequalities policy development budget for 21-22, as set out paragraph 312 in the appendix, as amended by the second last item in the table. Poverty and inequalities projects will be devolved, I think it's probably the best word, Liz, to the area committees for consideration and dispersal. Okay, or words to that effect. Everybody happy with that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think everybody's agreed on that. Mark, thank you very much. And Liz, thanks for your interventions there as well. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Move on to item number 6, the hardship fund and community fund allocation. I think I've got Kirsty. Yeah, Kirsty's on the line here. The report provides an update to members on the performance monitoring of the Scottish Government Hardship Fund and the community food allocation from the non-shielding but at-risk fund, and provides an overview of the impact on individuals, families and communities. Kirsty, have you any update or anything you'd like to add to your report?
Nothing to add, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Right, okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Kirsty? I think you're getting off light, Kirsty. The only thing I would say is I've visited some of the team in the Irish Street last week. I was highly impressed, I have to say. Given the time and effort and all the different parts I've played in this over the piece, I think as a council we really need to, I don't think it's over egging the pudding here, we really need to just recognise the significant contribution made by our third sector partners or volunteers and communities, as well as our staff, you know, some of whom have been working 7 days a week for periods and 10, 12-hour shifts and God knows all what. I don't think we can speak highly enough of the commitment right across the region of everybody. Is there nobody wanting to come in here at all, other than that? No, I'm not seeing any hands. So in that case, Kirsty, I'm going to move to recommendations. So we're to note the use of the council allocations from the Scottish Government Hardship Fund and for community food for the non-shielding but at-risk fund, totaling 1.586 million. Then 2.2, recognise the significant contribution made by third sector partners, volunteers and communities in delivering support through the Hardship Fund and community food allocations to the overall COVID-19 response. And then finally, 2.3, scrutinise the performance monitoring information and reporting arrangements set out in paragraphs 312 to 317. So are we happy with all those recommendations? Again, I'll take no comment, it's positive. Happy, thanks very much, John. Kirsty, thanks very much for your time, and it's always nice to see you. Look after yourself. In that case, then we'll move on to item number 7, which is the Roads Service Improvement Action Plan. The report provides members with the opportunity to consider progress on the Road Service Improvement Action Plan and agree the allocation of funding to provide resources to progress a number of the Improvement Action Plan recommendations. I've got Stephen Herriot will lead in the report, and Mike Fox is also available through Teams to take any questions. Stephen, is there anything you'd like to update us on at this moment, or are you?
Chair, nothing to add to the report, thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. So I'm going to go straight to questions. Who have we got in here? Is that Dougie I saw? Dougie Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. It's not a question, it's just an observation from 3.7. From the perspective of our sort of wide-ranging work on tackling the climate emergency, I think the ramping up of active travel is very welcome, and the active travel strategy that's to follow, look forward to see that. So thanks for taking that work forward.
Adam.
Thanks. Just not a specific question, it's more a point. I appreciate that this report is allocating some funding to required resources for the implementation of the Transport Scotland Act. And while I welcome that, I do think it would be appropriate for this committee to receive a sort of standalone report on the Transport Scotland Act. Particularly as we get to a point of implementation. I imagine that there will be a number of costs on that. We'll be trying to make it cost neutral, and I imagine that will be sort of in line with decriminalisation of parking. So just not going to say it's in the next month or in 6 months, but at an appropriate time that we'll receive that report.
Adam, I couldn't agree more with you, and I think, Stephen, it's maybe a suggestion that applies to all new legislation right across the council. So whilst we can discuss this here today, I think taking it forward, I think maybe we speak the leader, deputy leader, and the two business managers to take that forward with the heads of service to make sure that any new legislation across the council is made, you know, that obligations are clear to elected members what they are. But in particular, this one here, and I think we could put in a recommendation in here actually to for some form of seminar or whatever you might want to call it, so that members are aware of what the council's obligations are under new legislation. Not only this one, but anything else that crops up. I think, does that cover what you were meaning, Adam?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we'll do two things in there. We'll put an extra recommendation in, Stephen. and then we can take it up with the leader, deputy leaders in on this committee. So, and one of the business managers on this committee, so we can take that forward. The wider information thing for the council. Anyone else got any questions for Stephen or Mike? No, I'm not seeing anybody wanting to come in. There's a hand come up now. We don't know who that is.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah. Who's on? Oh, it's Willie. Yeah. Come in, Willie.
Aye, no, it's just to seek clarification and maybe your advice on this one. And I'm looking at active travel, parking, road safety and traffic work package groups, and we're just moving into, we are in unprecedented times, and it could be said that it's a positive attribute, but we're soon, and if indeed we haven't already reached the point on last weekend, but the staycation, the whole idea of more and more mobile homes, etc. I know it's not in the report, but is that something that we would deal with under roads in terms of resources that are going to be made available to areas where people will gravitate towards? And I'm thinking more along from the whole Dalbeattie coastline and through to Sandhead, Port Logan, Port Patrick, etc. Have we got the resources to deal with this so that people, communities, only inconvenienced or upset by the influx of mobile homes, etc., within the road service improvement plan?
Stephen, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, just to come in on that, and it's not related to this report, but Mike is active and contributes to a visitor management group for the South of Scotland, looking at these very issues. And we're having some input to the RRR team, and understand the report's going to the RRR subcommittee on investment around some of these issues in terms of resources and infrastructure that may be required over the summer for enhanced services, appreciating that there will be an increase in visitors to the region. So that is being progressed by the RRR group, and I understand through the subcommittee. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. That was my understanding as well, because it cuts right across the department, doesn't it, and the council. So, your point's well made, Willie. Are you happy with that answer?
Yeah, happy that it's going on to RRR, because we're saying the summer, it's almost upon us. If last week's anything to go by.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anyone else on item 7? No, not seeing anybody at all. So we'll move to recommendations. So 2.1 will note, 2.2 agree to the allocation of funding within the asset class active travel and speed limit capital programmes for the creation of 2 senior technician posts within the road service to assist in the delivery of the improvement actions for these service areas, deliver the council's active travel and speed limit projects, and secure external funding to support the acceleration of council projects for active travel and speed limits. That takes us on to 2.3. Again, agree to receive funding from Scottish Government of 52k to enable appropriate road assessments which are required due to the parking prohibitions contained in the Transport Scotland Act 2019. 2.4, agree to the allocation of the Scottish Government funding of 52k for the creation of a senior technician post within the road service to assist in the delivery of the requirements of the Transport Scotland 2019 and the development of the council's parking strategy. And the 2.5 in there is to for the service to have a seminar or member engagement on the implications of the Transport Scotland Act 2019 as part of a wider member education on their obligations under different legislation. Are we comfortable with that? Okay, thanks very much. So they're all agreed. I'm not having anybody who's against it. I see there's a hand still up there. I think it's Willie. Willie, can you put your hand down? Thank you very much. Okay, Stephen and Mike, thanks very much. We'll now move on to item number 8, and that is the Infrastructure Capital Programme 21-22, 23-24 and the Flood Protection Schemes report by the Head of Roads and Infrastructure. The report provides members with information on the proposed Infrastructure Asset Class Programme for 21-22 and 22-23-24 and provides details of the schemes to be undertaken in 21-22 within the Infrastructure Asset Class for approval and to provide an update on this committee's flood protection schemes. Since the publication of the Communities Committee reports, the tender for the Langham Suspension Bridge project has been returned to the Council as per Appendix 2, page 106. Committee are asked to approve the progression of this project at the total scheme cost of 424k, including previous year's spend to refurbish the bridge within the structures programme, and note that in future capital monitoring reporting that this project will be reported as an individual item in the Infrastructure Asset Class Programme budget list of programmes and projects. I've got Mike Fox and William Neal here today available to take any questions on the report, along with Duncan MacDonald and James MacLeod, also available to answer specific questions in relation to their areas of expertise. So who have I got first then? Dougie Campbell and then John Young, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Reference to 3.18 and the bridge inspection of Kirkcudbright Bridge. First of all, just to thank officers for the ward members' briefing last week on this subject. It was very helpful and it allowed us to discuss in quite a bit of detail the inspection process. It was unfortunate last week that there was a short piece in the Galloway news which appeared to make a connection with the recent upgrading of the vehicle control system on the bridge. But what was clarified during the briefing was that the inspection process of the bridge is basically following process and the need for regular inspections, and that's particularly relevant because Kirkcudbright Bridge perhaps is reaching the end of its lifetime in the next 2 or 3 decades, and it was very helpful to have that clarification, and thanks for letting me in, Chair.
Thank you. Who have I got next? I've got John Young, Pauline, Willie and Ian Carruthers in that order.
Thank you, Chair. It's to do with flood protection. One of the main recommendations of the 2013 Castle Douglas flood risk assessment was raising the height of the Black Park embankments to mitigate against future flooding of the River Dee into Castle Douglas. And you may remember this because this flooding happened in 2015. Can officers please liaise with DRAX, the new owners of the Galloway Hydro Scheme? It previously was Scottish Power who partnered the council in creating the 2013 report. Could officers liaise with DRAX and seek assurances that this work will be carried out and report back on their findings? Because it's almost 10 years since this report was done, and the embankments are of various heights and some of them in poor repair, and it's a huge problem just waiting to happen. So can I have assurance from the officers that they'll speak to DRAX and report back on their findings? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll leave that to the officers to answer. I think that can be taken offline. Can we take that forward offline? Is it, who's leading this? Is it James, is it? Yeah, or is it Mike?
Yeah. Through yourself, Chair. Yes, quite happy to take that offline with local members, and I'll do that after committee if one of them wants to give me a call. We can discuss that. If Councillor Young wants to give me a call, I can certainly discuss that offline.
Thanks very much. Thanks, James. Right now, let's see what Pauline.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'd just like to reiterate Councillor Campbell's comments with regards to thanking officers for agreeing to meet with us last week. We're very grateful for the time that you gave us. The community over the last year or so have been a bit concerned with regards to the Kirkcudbright Bridge. In terms of what's been happening with the vehicle detection system, we're all aware that the calibration settings needed adjusted, and Duncan MacDonald was very prompt in getting back to me and assuring me that this has been fixed, and then communicating this to other councillors. So thank you for that, Duncan. Moving on from that, Councillor Maitland, I'm sure will bring it up, as I noticed that she's going to speak, as she has brought forward an idea that may assist going forward with Kirkcudbright Bridge in the future, and I've taken it on board this morning to have a chat kindly with Tony Topping, who was good enough to call me. Thank you for that, Tony. And it's just to make members aware that if we look to the future with regards to the active travel strategy, which was in agenda item number 7, and link it into item number 8, and look at different usage of lanes, the actual systems that can be used in the future are activated by default automatically. So this would mean that community members who have shown concern in Kirkcudbrightshire across the last year or two with systems being a little bit slow and sometimes not working properly could be activated by default, which would therefore mean traffic was not held up and people were not held back going across the bridge, going about their duties. So I would just very much like officers to bear that in mind going forward, and I think we've already alluded to that last week with Mike Fox, Stephen Herriot, Duncan MacDonald, and hopefully Tony Topping brought into the equation. So thanks for that, and hopefully we'll see the bridge and the management of that going forward looking more positive. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Pauline. Everybody's got ideas and we should listen to them all, and obviously the officers will take that forward and bring back some feasibility stuff for us. I think that's a given. I see Mike nodding his head. So thanks, Pauline. I've got Willie, Ian Carruthers, Jane, Sean Maitland and Ronnie Tate in that order. So it's Willie first.
Yeah, Chair, a couple of points. It's on page 65, I think it is, 3.42. It's in relation to the Stranraer flood protection works, and in particular reference to the Station Street. And it's really looking for a timeline. We were given a time scale at a previous committee meeting that laid out, once the works or the purchase of the land that was required, then what could commence. And what we're really looking for now that the land is or has been purchased is a timeline, so that we know when the design work will start, and then a follow on to that. We've already had, as I say, that time scale, and I think it was in 2000. I'm looking at an email in 4th of September 2019 that refers to this time scale. That refers to the timescale. But as local members, we have been asking, and Brian has been trying to accommodate us in providing that timeline. So from today, I would hope that we can get, not hope, I would ask that we be provided with a timeline rather than just the timescale, as we've already been provided for works to commence in the Blackstank Town Burn flood prevention that's required there. And just as a note on page 680, is that 83 or 63? The line goes through it. 3.29, and it's the 716 Stramore Coastal Road, and a note that works were completed. And again, I thank Brian, or rather Duncan MacDonald, for all the work he has done on this. And that the slipway works have proven to reduce the amount of water and debris reaching the carriageway. Can we presume that at some point in time this may lead to that there will be no need for the barrier as and when there is high tides or flood warnings from SEPA, if the slipway is doing the work that it says here? And also, I know in that one that the skewering or the turning head, if we're any closer to the 716, the alternative route for some of the residents at the Grinning, I may have to take that one offline with James and Duncan. I'm quite happy to do that. So it's the Stranraer flood that we have a timeline ASAP, and that we get some confirmation whether the works that has been done will lead to the barrier no longer being used.
I'm looking for which officer's got to answer that, but I think if we could do that, and I think Willie's offered to take it offline, but if you could let all the 4 ward members be updated at the same time, be really helpful. So is it Duncan, are you going to take that forward, or Jim? Duncan, yeah?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can come back on certainly on the 716 Drumore Coastal Road, and also provide an update on timelines for Stranraer flood protection scheme.
Okay, Willie, you happy with that?
Yeah, and if that could, I'm grateful if Duncan could provide that as soon as possible, so that we know when it is, because we now have purchased the land. It's to get that timeline, not just the time scale, but the timeline,
yeah.
So we know work is commencing and at a pace, if you like.
Okay, it's a local issue, so I'll leave Duncan to liaise with you and the other 3 ward members, Willie, if you're happy with that. So who have I got now? Thank you very much, Willie. Ian Crothers.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of small points. So at 3.30, page, I think it's 84. It's an update in regards to that particular project, looking for when it's going to. It talks about the FPT coming back to communities and the potential costs, what the timelines are on that, the expected outcomes from that. But it does talk about Hodham and Kinmont Estate in there as well. It's Hodom. I'm being pedantic there, Chair, but there's a local company spelled Hodam, and it's often the case people get that mixed up. But just for the sake of accuracy, and at 3.39, it talks about the White Sands, and there's been delays there. I just want to get an update in regards to what the delays are, why that was. May well know that, but just want to be absolutely clear. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I'll let one of the officers come in about Powfoot. I'll also, I think we're still in a legal process for the White Sands, or is that complete? If they're still in a legal process, I don't think we can discuss that today, Ian. It'll be for another day. Okay, I would use 10.12, the standing orders, saying it wouldn't be competent today, but I'll ask an officer to give you a response to Powfoot.
Thank you, Chair. But yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, we have carried out some temporary emergency works at this section of the coastline to buy some time, essentially, because it's quite a complicated site in terms of the protected species in that area. So this current financial year that we've just entered, we're looking to do preparatory work, get surveys done in terms of habitat surveys, etc., and do that consultation work with the various stakeholders that were listed in the report, with the intention of actually trying to achieve the works themselves in the following financial year. Just knowing that it'll take time to get approvals on an acceptable method of construction to satisfy all the parties.
Okay, thanks, Duncan. And I'll just refer you to the White Sands 3.39. That'll be a report coming to the next committee, which is why I would be suggesting, following to a full council decision, we are where we are, and we'll discuss it at next time round, Ian.
I suppose the detail's not there, Chair. That's what it is. The regards to what that is. So I'm just asking for that detail.
Well, because it's come to report to the next committee. That's why.
And you're saying that there's legal reasons that we can't actually
get that
question answered today.
No. What I'm saying is I'm using Standard Order 10.1.2, and I'll ask the Governance Officer just to verify that I've got this right. Is that I don't think it's competent today, because it tells you very clearly in the paper that an update paper is coming to the next Communities Committee. So I'm not going to ask officers to then start speaking to people here about an item off the top of our head, because we need the structure of a committee is we get the papers beforehand, then we scrutinise the papers and we ask questions on the papers. So
I suppose, Chair, all I was looking for, Chair, was the clarification. Was it in regards to the delay and the stalling? I know it wasn't on purpose, but the stalling of the actual notification.
No,
to local people in that area. Is it something completely different? Just look for that clarity, Chair.
Ian, this is the end of the matter, right? 3.39 is crystal clear. It's come to the next committee. Okay, so we're moving on. Next person is Jane, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose I think I was really interested in Appendix number 3. I think it's about identification of a project, and when does a project have a sort of beginning, middle, and an end? And the reason that everybody got very excited about Kirkcudbright Bridge is because there appeared to be a bit of mission creep. I think it would be fair to say. I echo my fellow elected members' views on the meeting we had. Very helpful, very useful, and thank you very much indeed, officers, for that. So in terms of when it would come back to us with respect to increase of a project, perhaps I could have some assistance with that. The final thing I want to say is, could I suggest that the Cast Fairn flood management project is something which really needs to be looked at as a matter of priority? I know that the village is very anxious about flooding. Both ward members and myself have all been spoken to about this, and I think I would put in a plea that that is pushed along sharpish. So those are the 3 remarks I have, and I look forward to further investigations and options coming forward with respect to the bridge in the future.
Jane, thanks very much. Before I let one of the officers in, Appendix 3 I found very interesting as well. That sets out the process, am I right? Yeah. And I'm thinking here the education of the committee members, so that we all really understand what you guys are. You're the technical experts in this. You know, could we, for example, get a couple of examples of how this would work? Right. So hypothetical examples. If Mrs. A has an idea, and this is how we'll take this through. I don't want to create a lot of work for you, but it'd be really helpful for us if we could understand how it works in practice, and just. If there was a project you could show us as an example, for example, double use of the word there, but is there a way we could do that quite easily done for elected members? I see William's got his hand up.
Yes, through you, Chair. What we've identified in Appendix 1 are some actual large projects like the New Abbey Road, Pleasance Avenue, Park Road, Junction Improvement. Those are taken from the programme and listed as a separate project, and then that way you can see that it's a large piece of work that we are working on, focusing on, and we report on it separately through the committee reports. If we do find another piece of work that starts to bubble up, like maybe Kirkcudbright Bridge, etc., we would seek to move that out and report it separately so it's transparent to yourselves. Does that answer the question?
I think it does, because I know you did a bit of work with ward members about the stuff around about Park Farm to do with the new hospital and the Sustrans stuff. Your engagement in that was first class. I think Ian Blake was there, myself, Graham Bell. I think Rob was there at times. Ronnie was there at different times. So I think we all had felt as though there was a bit of ownership in that process. And I think if I'm picking up Jane correctly, is that is that a bit of good practice we could move across the region and get the elected members, the ward councillors, a lot more involved. But to do that, we need to understand the process. And I remember you explained the process to us at the time for the stuff for the roads improvements to do with the new hospital. And that was very clear that time. I think it was maybe James and Mike. I think it was James, was it? It held some of the stuff. So I mean, can we do something like that? I suppose to educate, to make members more informed about how we go about this. Is that possible?
Can I come in, Chair? Just
of course, Mike. Yeah, just come in.
Yeah. Is this something possibly that you would like us to do offline and come back with examples?
Yes, I absolutely. I don't expect you to come out today. So
Yeah.
I think what I'm getting at here, Mike, as well, is that we really need to involve the local ward members in lots of things, because they'll see things, everyday things that the engineers, for example, might not see. They'll see the technical issues. I'm talking about the local people issues, I think, is what I think maybe, and it's just a way of minimising anxiety, complaints, whatever. I think that's what Jane's getting at. Am I right, Jane?
Absolutely, Chairman. And there are good ways of doing it, and I would suggest that what we did last week was an extremely good way of doing it. So, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jane. That's what I thought you meant. Right, a few still to go. I've got Sean, Ronnie Tate, and then Pauline, and then I think we'll move to recommendations if we can. Sean.
Thanks, Chair. Mine's something that I raised, I think, at the last meeting or the meeting before that, and it was just, I think we've established the principle of phasing some of the projects, like road surfacing projects, because sometimes, the length of the road or the footway, it merits actually, because of the limited budget, it's done in phases. And I did ask it the last time. I think I gave a couple of examples in my own word, but I'm sure others have got examples as well. But the ones I'd give as examples were the Port Street, where we've done about 3 phases over about 5 or 6 years. There's one phase to go. There's the Eastriggs to Dornoch footway, and there's also the main road through Annan. And what I'd asked was that normally, I can accept the principle of phasing, but then you would expect each year that, you would do a next phase of it until it was complete. But what seems to happen, if I look at the programme this year, then none of these are featured on that. So it's just about establishing the principle, or offline, if you can just maybe explain why those are not being progressed at this time.
Who wants to pick that up?
I can pick that up, Chair. I'm more than happy to speak to Councillor Marshall offline and sort of run through the schemes that we have this year and discuss the phasing of various works.
You okay with that, Sean? Yeah?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I take it you'll share it with the rest of the ward members as well, Mike. Yeah. Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ronnie Tate.
Thanks, Chair. Specifically on item 3.33 and 3.34 on page 84. Can I just remind actually the officers and the members, this is the flood prevention project that was going to be taking place at Homewood Drive, Langham. Dumfries and Galloway Council, they commissioned a company called RPS. My memory serves me right, it was on in 2016 to look at, there were 6 options put forward for this flood prevention project, and they actually decided to go for option 6, which at a cost of £250,000. And now it was brought before the, let me see, it was the Economic, Environment and Infrastructure Committee on January 2018, and the members were looking for approval at the committee meeting on the 20th of March 2018. So I fast forward to actually, it would be July 2018, and it basically says in the recommendations, the Homewood Drive flood prevention scheme previously approved by the committee, which I presume would probably be, I don't know if it's the April meeting or not, but anyway, it was approved according to the July Economic, Environment and Infrastructure Committee. So I'm just, and then in, I think it was November 2018, there was a paper come out, an email actually, that the consultants, RPS, were putting together the contract documents, were being finalised actually, and it was going to the procurement team and to the contract strategy side of things. So my question basically is, what has happened to this project? It was approved by the Economic, Environment and Infrastructure Committee in 2018. It went to the procurement team, but what's happened to it actually? Because if you look at page 84 on 3.34, we're down to sort of a sticking plaster situation here, where we're talking about, I presume, floodgates for the backs, for the doors, and also covers for the ventilation systems in these houses. Because I can identify, I was asked to go up in October last year. I got a phone call at 10 o'clock at night by two constituents up at Mickleham side. And I went up and the water was cascading across the retaining wall at the back of these houses. It was unbelievable. And the only way this water, it was running around the houses, but also the people that live in these houses had the sense to lift up the drainage covers that were on top of the inspection chambers that look at the sewerage works. And the water was running, some of the water was running down there. Now, I just if you could answer me the timelines on this, or is it not going to happen at all now? And also the cost at that time in 2018 was 250,000K. It is now up to 500,000K. So it'd be interesting to know again why it's went up from 250 to 500 in the time scale. So I'd be very interested if I could get a little bit of a response from the officers, please. Chair.
Can somebody update the member?
Yeah, Chair, through yourself. Councillor Tate, my understanding was that my colleagues, Brian and Michael, met with you and other local members a week or so back to discuss the issues regarding Homewood. Can I just confirm that's correct? I know Brian's not on the call today, not on the committee today.
Yeah, it was further back as a week ago, actually. Probably.
Yeah. Okay. I was checking his diary for dates. I thought it was maybe a week and a half ago, something that sort of order. So the history to this one was that there has been work done, as you point out, by RPS, who are the consultant for the main river scheme, and having gone to procurement and having got a detailed price estimate for it, it came in considerably higher than the estimated 250. The report in front of you at 3.33 makes as I believe was advised when you met with Brian and Michael, that the impacts of the current runoff or issues from the Homewood to these properties, in terms of costing out how much it impacts upon the properties compared to the cost of the scheme, as I said, shows a benefit cost ratio of significantly less than 1. As a consequence, that would be a scheme that would then be funded by Dumfries and Galloway Council, with no recourse to Scottish Government funding for that nature of works as part of the overall scheme. So that's the reason why looking at lower cost measures. I think the other thing is that the experience from the team is that they're actually, when they've done engagement with the properties there, including directly with the properties and through DGHP, that there has actually been very limited feedback on the impacts of runoff from the hillside. So spending £500,000 when there doesn't seem to be, I appreciate that you've been out there and met with one or two property owners or tenants of properties there, but the impacts that we're seeing is compared to other locations across the region that are at risk of flooding or have flooded, doesn't seem to be as significant, and therefore measures that can be put in place to prevent water getting under properties or into properties would seem to be more affordable and more manageable in terms of impact. So I'm quite happy again to take this offline with yourself. My team can take it offline with yourself and other local members to talk through in a little bit more detail on the proposed works and how that will reduce the risk for these properties and their owners and DGHP alike, if that's of a benefit to you.
Okay,
can I come back in, Chair?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough, but I've seen it with my own eyes, the water coming over these walls. And also I have to hark back to the commission report by RPS in 2016 on their conclusion. Actually, they say in their conclusion that the flooding to properties and gardens on Homewood Drive and Meekland Side, it was due to frequency and severity. That's what they say. It's severity, severe flooding. This is what's in their conclusion in the report in 2016. So, it's not just me going up there and seeing the water coming over the retaining walls, but this is also in the conclusion report by RPS in 2016. So, I'm happy to take it offline, but I feel I must air this in front of the members as well as the full committee as well. But I'm happy to take it offline again, actually.
Okay, Ronnie, you've got it on the tape, so you have raised it with the other members, which you're quite entitled to do. And we've also got the commitment for officers to deal with you and other ward members to try and resolve this situation or take it forward. So with that, I think I'll move on to who have I got next? Well, I've got Pauline, I think, final speaker, and then we'll go to recommendations. Pauline?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot here a bit, Andy. Could you just confirm with me, I know you kindly acted really quickly with regards to concerns I had last week, and so did my fellow councillors with regards to communication, and you very quickly put up a post on the Dumfries and Galloway Council website with regards to Kirkcudbright Bridge. Will you be following that up, Chair, with a press release to keep the community updated, or is that the communication as far as it will go? And last point to make, if that's okay, is just to concur with Councillor Maitland with regards to Carstfairn. Again, similar problems that other councillors are having, and I appreciate it's very demanding for all of you at the moment as officers because the flooding is an ongoing issue. But we had to sort out 100 sandbags for the Carstfairn community in the recent weeks, and to be fair, the Abercrombie depot acted really quickly, so thanks for that, officers. So yeah, just to ask you about the communication with regards to Kirkcudbright Bridge and other such projects, if any changes. Thanks, Chair.
The plan was, after today's committee decision, not want to take a position before we've actually made a decision. Yes, is that there will be comms about this to make it clear to exactly what the money is for, or what the agreement to set aside that part of the budget is for. I think we made it clear in the video. You're right, you know what it's for, but like everything else, small town or smallish town, rumours very quickly become fact if you don't correct them. So yes, that's the commitment for that. And the bit about Carstfairn, I totally agree with you. It's the same with all these small villages and schemes and everything else. It's just a case of, yes, we should be putting as much resources into it as we possibly can to make the houses as safe as we can for people. It's as simple as that. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Right, in that case then we'll move on to the recommendations, and that are 2.1 is to approve the proposed programme budgets for the infrastructure asset class capital programme at Appendix 1. And in 2.2, approve the proposed list of infrastructure asset class capital programmes at Appendix 2, and approve delegated variations to individual programme funding allocations within the limits, Appendix 3. Are we all agreed? I see no dissent. I'll just give you a minute or two. Okay, in that case, they're all agreed. Thank you very much. Mike, William, James, Duncan, thanks very much for helping us out today with that. We're now moving on to item number 9. Report Health Authorities report with the Director of Communities. I see somebody needs to leave, that's okay. Now, the report which was originally published has been withdrawn and replaced with the updated version that was emailed out to everyone on the 31st of March. So I think what I'll need to do first is just to make sure that everybody has received that updated copy, and maybe to ask Sandra if, before I go any further into this, just to say if I need to wait to see if anybody hasn't received it. Jane, have you had this or no? You've got it, yeah. Okay, thanks very much. So everyone's had it. That seems to be the case. So in that case, then we'll just go on. The report provides an update to members.
Sorry, Andy, I don't seem to have it. I've just got the report that's in the main bundle.
It was emailed out to everybody, Willie, on the 31st of March.
Right.
If you can email.
No, if it's in the email, I've got it in the email, Andy. I ain't got it in front of me.
Right. Okay. That came out from. Bear with me. Tracy Sonko put it out to members of the Communities Committee on the 31st of March at 16:46. So. Nick saying he can post it in the chat now. I think what we need to find out from Sandra to give members the option here, Sandra, are there any major changes to the paper or are the minor changes?
Thanks, Chair. The main changes are about the timeline from Scottish Government. And the fact that we were still waiting for a resource plan template, which has now been received. That was received on the 29th of March and is now included as an appendix. And also included in the appendix is the completed resource plan in draft form for agreement for submission to Scottish Government today by members. So that is also there. There are two new appendices that weren't in the original report, and the timing, which means that our implementation date would be October now, whereas previously we thought it was going to be into 2022.
Right. I suppose we've a decision to take here because there's a number of committee members who are saying they haven't really seen it as such as in its entirety. A number of options are open to me, and I see Nick's posting it on the chat now, but I'm actually wondering, Sandra, whether we can defer this until after we've had a break. That give members a chance to, it's too big a decision to make, right? Just hoping that everybody's had full information. So I think what I'll do, and Nick, I'm looking to you for guidance here, I can delay the report on the Port Authority and ask Sandra to come back after we've had our break, and we'll take it as first item of the agenda immediately after the break. Are members happy with that at this stage? And then in the meantime, we can reissue that initial email to all the members of this committee so that they've all got it and they can look at it, download it, and then take it forward from there. I think it's a sensible solution to this situation. Adam, you want to speak? Are you agreeing with that or what?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I actually put that in before you had outlined that. Just to say, I haven't received the email and it's not up on ModGov, which is where I would have noticed it come up. So as long as we get some sort of a break to be able to read that, I'm quite satisfied with that. Okay, then. So,
Nick, for the minutes, I'm going to defer this item until after the break, so that members can read the report, the updated report, and digest it and then come back with questions for Sandra. I think it's too important to just rush this through. So if that's the case, then we'll move on now to item number 10. Sandra, sorry to mess you about. We'll see you after the break, okay? So we'll go into the leisure, culture, wellbeing and customer services planning in relation to COVID-19. Okay, the report provides members with an up-to-date position in relation to the planning around leisure, culture, wellbeing and customer services, and provides key service considerations associated with COVID-19. We've got Karen with us today. Karen, is there anything you want to add to your report? Any update you can give us? Maybe more new timelines or anything like that?
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. It was just to confirm that the Scottish Government guidance that is outlined within this report remains the same, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, have we any questions for Karen? John Young.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Karen. I'm aware that latterly we were very well updated with the situation with some of our leisure facilities. For instance, the Ice Bowl were very informative with exactly what was going on there. So thank you for that. I'm aware, as other members will be, that some of our leisure facilities required capital works to make them COVID safe, if you like, or COVID secure, such as upgrading or changing the ventilation systems from a recirculating one to a throughput ventilation system. I'm wondering if all the funding is in place for these capital works, and I'm also wondering how this work is progressing. I wonder if a paper could be, or a report could be distributed showing where we are with each leisure facility. Obviously, I'm particularly interested in Castle Douglas swimming pool as well as the Ice Bowl. Thank you.
Just go ahead, Karen. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Young. Just to confirm, works to all leisure facilities in terms of ventilation and in conjunction with this are in line with the national guidance has been completed, and all leisure facilities will open in line with national guidance as determined within the report. In terms of Castle Douglas pool specifically, and in relation to future capital works required within that building, I can confirm that we're continuing to work with property services to determine what those works are and associated costs of them. Thank you.
Okay with that, John?
Yes, thank you, Karen. I wonder if the ward members could be kept up to date with how this is progressing with your liaison with property services and identifying what work needs to be done and where it will be done. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, you can do that, Karen, yeah.
Absolutely happy to keep ward members up to date. Thank you.
I take it that'll be all the projects, Karen, not just the one, yeah.
Absolutely. In terms of the reopening of all facilities, arts, museums, customer services and leisure facilities, will keep ward members up to date.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Karen. I've got Jim Dempster and then Willie Scobie.
Thanks, Chair. Much along the same lines, Chair, Karen. It's about the libraries and customer services centres. I know the last time there was a lockdown, I think there were 3 across the region. I can't mind, I maybe be misrepresenting the number, but certainly one in my ward that wasn't open at all and couldn't be open because of the constraints within the facility. I don't expect an answer today, but I trust that there will be some arrangement put in place to ensure that customer services centres across the region will open and that none will be left sort of hanging on the vine where there is another a requirement for additional resource or relocation or whatever. That will be considered and reported back to members. I don't expect a reply today, but I'm keen to see that all customer services centres and all libraries are open when that's appropriate, and an update again would be useful, Chair, Karen. Thank you.
Okay, Karen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Dempster. Yeah, just to confirm, as detailed within the report, members will be kept up to date on a ward-by-ward basis in relation to each of the facilities within your wards, and facilities will be reopened in line with national guidance when it's fit to do so.
So I can just come back to you. That was the problem before. National guidance didn't provide for 3 to open at all because of the constraints, and I would hope that some consideration be given to alternative provision if that's a long-term prognosis. But that's not for today, and I appreciate that. I just want to make that point to Karen that national guidance may well keep some closed, and that's not what we as a council would propose to do. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Karen.
Okay, before I let Willie in, Harry, he wants to come in. Is it some clarification, Harry?
Yeah, thanks very much indeed, Chair. Yeah, just to pick up on Councillor Dempster's point, yeah, I mean, what we've certainly found over the last 12 months, and this came from feedback from service users, is that some of the innovations that we have entered into in terms of online services has been extremely well received. And as Councillor Dempster's pointed out, some of the national guidance that we still need to comply with has dictated that some sites, simply because of size, ability to move round about the building, etc., unfortunately means that those sites at the moment cannot open. But what we're certainly wanting to do is bring forward proposals to members as time moves forward, and obviously ensure that members are updated accordingly. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks.
Chair, if I can go back very briefly, I'm grateful to Harry for that. That's really encouraging. But aye, so I'm happy with that.
At the end of the day, Jim, it would be a member decision, not an officer decision, unless it's an emergency situation. So, yeah, so I think your point's well made. I've got Willie first, Paul, and then Pauline. Yeah.
Yeah, Chair, and I think as members we do need as much information and as soon as possible to allow us to again, feedback to the public. And just this morning I had one a member of the public asking me when can I hand in library books, and I had to say, well, I don't know, yeah, and I don't know. So it'd be good if we could find out, because I'm looking at page 129, and we're looking at major festival and events. Well, we've got local events, and I'm hearing last week how the Stranraer show isn't going ahead this year. I don't think that the Patrick Lifeboat Week, I think they're in the same position, but yet I think by the 26th of April we're going to get further lifting or restrictions where we're able to move about the whole or the region, or that people can move about their own region without crossing into another. But there may be further updates on the 26th because there's still this border between the 3 countries of Scotland, England and Ireland and indeed Wales. So, that we've got the UK government making announcements in the relaxation and the Scottish. So we do need to know, in particular 2 events, local events, what's possible, what's open in terms of council facilities, outdoor and indoor, for people who are still looking at the possibility of organising events in this year, given the restrictions seem to be lifting, that we're in a good place. Long may that continue, but as long as we're in that good place, good position, then people are looking at how can we organise local events, fetes, etc. So we do need the information, and we do need it as soon as possible, notwithstanding that it's national guidelines that we are following on this one, but we need that information as quickly as possible in terms of what will be open, when will it be open, and what will be available, so that people can run about any events, in the summer, where we are expecting staycation, increased number of tourists coming to our area, and we do want to, welcome people, and events, fetes, etc., local community fetes, they're important to the areas. So we do need the information as soon as possible, Chair, and thank Karen if she can provide that, with what is available just now, so that the public can be made aware as well. It's not just members that need to know, it's the whole public.
All the points made. It actually confirms what John Young said at the very start, the questions and answers here. That communication approach to the public, to the facilities, to members, to everybody, really can stress enough, probably the most important part of this going forward here, because everything you said there, I don't think anybody can argue with anything you said, Willie, or what John Young said. So we just need to learn from the past. Let's be honest with people. Let's tell them what's available. And I suppose that's what 2.3 is agreeing today when we come to recommendations about the approach we're going to take. And I think we've made our views quite clear, and Karen and Harry and company will take that on board as they take this forward. Now, with that, I'm going to move to Pauline, if you've nothing else to add to that, Willie. Pauline?
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Karen. Good to see you. Couple of things. With regards to the Visit South West Scotland and the South West Coastal 300 campaign that's live on Facebook at the moment, really pushing for people to come to Dumfries and Galloway now, which is fantastic, overdoing the 500. I know you've been very communicative with me, Karen, in terms of the groups that have got together, which is the South of Scotland Visitor Management Planning Group. So when that multi-agency group gets together, again, reiterating what previous councillors have said, I think it's really important, if that's okay, to keep us up to date with the collaboration and what is going to come out of that in terms of public facilities, public toilets, waste management, car parking for camper vans, etc. I know you're working really hard on this at the moment, but I'm sure councillors are the same as myself. We are getting constant inquiries as to can't get booked in, where are we going to go, we're going to wild camp, where can we dump rubbish, etc., etc. So communication be brilliant. And with regards to that, we've done really well in South West Scotland with regards to our testing centres and keeping the virus under control. I've had a couple of comments that the lateral flow testing centres are brilliant. They're really well run, but the signage to get to them is really difficult to find. I've had these conversations with Robert Lowther. He's kindly let me know that he will communicate this across the area. So could we make sure, I don't know if that's under your remit, Karen, sorry to dump you with this, but that the lateral flow testing centres are really well signposted so that if visitors are coming in and need tested or want to get tested during the summer, they can find them and take action promptly. I think that's me. So thanks, Chair. Thanks very much, Karen.
Okay, Karen, any response to that? I think.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Drysdale. Just to confirm, I'm happy to take that back to colleagues in terms of increasing signage for the lateral flow testing sites across the region, and just to agree several points that members have raised. Communication is paramount, and you know, we're really keen to ensure that's very clear and very robust going forward.
Yeah, so I'm assuming from that then, Karen, we're going to have a really in-depth communications plan that'll be council-wide, it'll not just be for us, that will be readily available, so like a question and answer, what can I do, what will be open. Given we can have interactive, we can hit on Kakubri, for example, and see what's available on Kakubri, hit on Gretna, what's available in Gretna, or whatever. So we need that simple message out there to everyone, and what they can do, what they can't do, what's open, what's not open, when it's going to open, when, you know, if it's not opening, the reason why it's not opening, and the potential, as Willie was saying, the potential timescales of when we think the national guidance, and I do appreciate it would be a guesstimate when they're going to allow full opening of all the different facilities. And to take Jim Dempster's point in there, we'll need to be really careful that there's no unintended consequences of some of the emergency decisions. And I think as long as we take that into consideration when we go forward, I'm seeing Dougie Campbell wants to come in at the last minute. Dougie?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, thanks for letting me in. It was just to mention in terms of facilities opening, ward members have received updates on the arrival of the Galloway ward at Kakubri Art Galleries, which is much appreciated. And this is going to be hugely beneficial to the local economy and region-wide, I suppose. But it's just to thank Karen and the team for keeping a close eye on this, and hopefully we won't see any further delays, because the local businesses are, you know, looking arrival because of the benefits that it will bring. So thanks for your work in that, and be grateful if you kept a close eye on it, Karen. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we'll leave that with Karen and Harry and Harry's wider team to take forward. So I'm not seeing anybody else want to speak, so can we move to the recommendations? Are we happy to agree the arrangements to ensure a safe and sustainable approach to reopening of the facilities stroke services in conjunction with the COVID response review of the recovery team and the elections team, paragraphs 390 to 316? It's the first bit. Then note the transformational activity that has progressed within each service unit, which will continue to be developed. That's in paragraphs 324 to 331. And then finally, 3, agree the communication approach to ensure that consistent and clear messages provided to our communities, paragraph 3.32 and 3.34. And I think Karen has got the measure of what members expect from that to keep the public and everyone else informed. So are we happy to agree these two things and note the second one? Again, I'll give you a couple of seconds. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody coming back with anything alternate to that. So I take that as agreed. Okay, Karen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to item 11, the Regional Coastal Benefit Fund for 21-22, report by Community Planning Engagement Officer, invites members to agree the awards from the Region-wide Coastal Benefit Fund. Liz Manson and Derek Hextall are in the virtual room with us to answer any questions. Either of you, are there any updates to the report, or are you happy just to go to members' scrutiny and questions?
Chair, can I just make one point of clarity in the report? At 312, I've noticed there's a slight error on the social value assessment. There were actually 4 applications that went through that process, not 3, and it was for applications requesting over 25,000 that was agreed by the committee, not 50.
Okay, that's noted, Derek. Thank you. Right, open it up for questions. Rob's left good declaration of interest. Jane, do you want to come in?
Well, I was just going to say, Chairman, that it's not a question, it's really a comment, and forgive me for this, but I thought what a tremendous selection of projects, really wide, really interesting, and I think there's a great coverage there. So I was very impressed, actually, at all the activity that's going on. So just to leave that with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a spread across the whole region, but it's pretty much a pretty fair spread of the region. And at the end of the day, it's only communities that meet the criteria that can apply for it. So I suppose under that criteria, it's covering all areas of the council where they were able to submit an application. I think I see Derek's nodding. He's obviously got a much better understanding of all the applications than I have. And I'm looking here. I haven't got anybody wanting to ask any questions. Oh, sorry, Ian, come in, yeah.
Thanks, just a late one. It's in regards to, for what I can see, Derek, is about 21k looking to get rolled over into next year. What's the opportunities for any potential bids this year? Projects coming forward to potentially tap into that? It looks like we're just being asked to roll it into next year.
Yeah, through you, Chair, it's just over £12,000, Councillor Cruthers, and we felt that maybe wasn't sufficient enough to open for another round of applications, but it's absolutely in members' hands to determine that.
Derek, just remind us, when we divvied the money up last year, and there was some carried over as well, wasn't there?
No, Chair, it was fully committed last year.
Last year, right, okay. It was a different fund. Different fund. I was thinking about. Ian, sorry to cut across you. Ian, you want to come back?
Well, so I just looked at the figures at 2.1, which is 4 and 16, Derek, and there's a 5k underspend. I think, or 395. Sorry, somewhere about there. That's how I came to my 21. But I wonder, Chair, would there be option, even though it is a small amount, if any potential projects come in, Under the right circumstances, would that be an option? It'd be good if it could be.
Derek or Liz, I'm looking for your expert advice on this, but my understanding, because this used to be administered by the big lottery, am I right? And we pretty much had to take on board a lot of what the conditions that they had. And that was a once a year application. Am I right? That's what we decided when this was first come under council management. And I think Derek's point was, if it was 112,000, Ian, I would say yes, right? But given it's about 10, 11 grand, I would be suggesting no. It just adds to the pot next year. The very fact that all these rural communities have had the opportunity, haven't taken it up to now, I'd be suggesting we carry it forward. I think it's probably the safest thing, Ian. But I do understand where you're coming from. But as I say, if it'd been 112 grand rather than 11 or 12 grand, I would have suggested yes, we would do something about it. Just my view, but obviously committee will take a decision on that. Willie?
Yeah, Chair. We're in the hands of, either we do or we don't. We could carry over the 12,000, or given that we are in unprecedented times, we've got communities that are just coming out and meeting again. In fact, they're still in these Zoom meetings or whatever they're called. And as the communities start to open up, hopefully, as we heard in the last report, when we get the national guidelines, there may be small projects that could benefit from that 12,000. So anything that's left could be carried over, but it might be worthwhile just keeping it open for any late applications on communities starting to open up and seeing, look, there's opportunities here for us to do small projects that the 12,000 could facilitate. It's if we got that money, we could do something, but if we don't have it, then we can't do anything. So it might be worthwhile just keeping it open, and anything that's left then gets carried over for any small projects from local communities. It's damned if you do and damned if you don't type situation, Chair, without disagreeing with what you said.
Willie, thank you for that. My view would be the governance needs to be watertight in this. And I would be suggesting that to open up a grant for £12,000 across the whole of the spectrum here, we could end up with, God knows, just because of now. I think before we came to come to a deliberation in that, Derek will tell us when do we next expect the next round to come?
Yeah, Chair, the allocations normally get notified to us from Scottish Government around October, November time, and then that gives us time to develop the process, and we normally open up, for the new financial year.
Right, so the timescale for the next round, and this will get carried forward to the October round, which is, of course, the annual round. So is there a way we can safely speed up the process from October to get money into the system sooner, given that we've got the process, finely tuned now, and with some minor recent adjustments to it? What's your best guesstimate we could actually get this money back into the community if it's carried forward?
Liz might be better coming in on this one, if that's okay, Liz.
Yeah, I mean, what we normally do is once we know how much you're getting from the fund, that we have a member seminar, and that's your opportunity to look at the criteria, what you want to use it for, and any particular areas to focus on for that year's funding. And that's because we don't know from year to year how much you're going to get, and very much we're in your hands about what you want to use that money for. So I think were we to open up again for this funding, it would be on the current framework and the current criteria. And I mean, as Derek said, we could open it up right now. I think one of the reasons that we try not to do it for small amounts of money is that you might have all sorts of many third sector organisations applying for a small amount of funding, so therefore there's going to be abortive work for some of them if there's only a small fund available. So the criteria, you might well change the criteria for the funding next year once you see how much it is. So I think that was why we were proposing that this small amount is rolled forward into next year.
Yeah, because it's only the amount we're going to get, because the principle of us administering this money is set in stone from Scottish Government, because that was taken off the big lottery and given to local authorities. Yes. Right,
yes.
So
it's not a case you're going to get it.
Yeah, we know we're going to get it. We just don't know what the exact amount's going to be. All right. So I hope that's clearer. Yeah, just a minute. I've got Dougie Campbell first, and then you, Ian. Okay.
Right. Thank you, Chair. I've just got a question around the framework and criteria, and it's clear from the report that environmental projects are looked at in terms of the applications, but I just want to ask if in the assessment of applications, are we looking at the possibility of projects which might actually be harmful in terms of climate change, and if not, if that could be considered in the next round of applications. Just using an example from the list of applications, the application from Wigton and Bladnoch Football Club for new floodlights, and there's a recommendation on the grant for that. Now, I'm not going to ask the question, did we look at the impact that could have on climate change, but just using that as an example of having to think another way around looking at climate change and building that into our thinking when we look at applications.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what Liz was talking about, having the seminars. Sorry, Derek. Having the seminars when we get the money in to make sure, and given that this was decided, I'm trying to think the criteria, this was decided some time ago, and I'm not that sure that some of the recent advances we've made in some of the council policies about how we fund things in the future were actually in place. So that would be something I would suggest that the seminars would thrash out, and we could incorporate that into the bids. For example, we might actually put a bit in there to say we would actively encourage bids that are going to help with climate change. There's loads of things we could do there. Does that answer your question, Dougie? I'm seeing both Liz and Derek nodding at that. So
yeah, it does. I think the seminar would be a good way of doing that. But it's not only like looking at applications which are there to respond to climate change. It's about a mindset that we don't approve applications that are actually going to be harmful to our priority on climate change. But it's something that, through the seminars would be very helpful to take that forward. Thanks, Chair.
Right. Okay, Ian Carruthers, you would come back in?
Yeah, just briefly, so I'd asked the question earlier about my figures, and I noticed myself that they were wrong, so I'd missed the allocation of £9,138, so Derek's nodding. So if I'd realised that sooner, Chair, I would have withdrew my comments, because 11, 12k isn't hardly worth bothering about. I thought over 20 was. So I withdraw my proposal for earlier, Chair.
Thanks very much, Ian. And I've got Jim Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. Just on the back of what's being said, if you look at page 7 in the appendix or the separate paper, 3.16, based on the scoring framework allocations, all applications are recommended for award with a percentage relevance to its score. Therefore, there's no guarantee that the other 12,000 will be used up, because it depends what the scoring's done, and it'll be a huge bit of work for very little outcome. And I would suggest that the proposal's accurate and right, Chair, that we simply carry this over to the next allocation process, and it seems to be that Councillor Carruthers has now agreed to that as well. So I would suggest maybe just go to the recommendations, Chair.
Yes, I think so. I think you're right, Jim. Just a pity that Upper Nithsdale isn't tidal, but never mind. That's that's a discussion for another day.
There used to be a beach in Sankar, you know, Chair, and I can give you clear evidence in that. I don't know whether that would qualify it or no, but I'd certainly try.
Right, Jim, trust me. Right, okay, and I see there's a comment from Mrs. Maitland about Queen of the South might have played better if they'd had torches last night. Right, okay. Right, I don't think there's any other questions want to come in. Ian's withdrawn his suggestion because it's clearer in the report what it is. So I'll move on to 2.1. Willie, I think, can you agree with us, everyone, so we make this universal, that will carry forward? Are you happy enough with that?
Yeah, Chair, it could go either way. I'm quite happy with what you're saying.
Right, okay, thanks very much. It just increases the fund next year, will it, to be honest? Yep. Okay then, so recommendations 2.1, note the region-wide coastal benefit allocation for 21-22 is 416,620 and a penny, set out in paragraph 3.2. 2.2, agree the projects to be funded from the fund as set out in paragraph 315. That's tables 1 and 2 and detailed in the appendix 2. And agree, subject to allocations made at 2.2, to carry forward any remaining funds to the 22-23 budget as set out in paragraph 316. We are happy to agree on that. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody coming in to the contrary. I'll just give you an extra few seconds. Right. In that case, then, in the absence of any to the contrary, we've agreed the recommendations as set out in the paper. Derek, thanks very much, and Liz, thank you. I'm just looking, it's 12:30 now. I intend to, we'll do the area committee discretionary budget now, because it's Liz we've got here. And so we're into item number 12. So the purpose of the report is to agree the strategic framework and timetable for the area committee discretionary budget for 2021. Liz, do you want to take us through it? Obviously, nobody else understands them on a committee meeting just now. To leave it with you, Liz. It's a missed call. Sorry. Sorry about that, folks. So, Liz, are you anything you want to update us on here? Or?
Thank you, Chair. No, I think perhaps just to reflect that in addition to the fact that you've got a carryover of almost £100,000 from last year, and as we've set out in paragraph 3.3, we already know that the demands on this budget for this financial year are going to be less because a number of the major events and initiatives are either been cancelled or they're going to be scaled back because of COVID restrictions and good practice. So we're anticipating that there will be around £200,000 this year, which the area committees don't normally have in terms of their grant application process. And so the introduction of that, along with the decision you made earlier, that the area committees will have a proportion of the £200,000 of anti-poverty money. And we'll bring a conjoined report to the May meetings about how the area committees wish to go forward with that. But the main message from this report is the reintroduction of a grant application process, because we're expecting you have around £200,000 this year that you wouldn't normally have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody, any questions for Liz? Willie?
Please, Chair. Just to what Liz was saying there, and I didn't, I didn't attend the seminar. But am I right in what you're saying, Liz, that this will come in May? The Winton Area Committee, I think, has got a meeting in April, I think a week Wednesday, and that would agree the criteria in which it wanted to disperse or the funding. Are we saying this will be put back to May now?
It's normally the May round of area committees, yeah.
So this is to agree the criteria on which it wants to disperse of the funding, and from there then the applications will be open for any from third sector to put in an interest or whatever it is. that clarifies that. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Liz.
Yeah, and that, of course, as you say, Liz, includes the 200k we delegated from this earlier this morning. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for nodding. Yeah, John Young.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Liz. Just a quick question. Are the percentage allocations for 21-22, are they recalculated annually or are they carried forward?
It's recalculated every 2 years. And so we'll be doing that later on this year, and we use up-to-date census information as well as SIMD, the Scottish Indices of Multiple Deprivation as well. So we do it every 2 years just to keep up to date.
Right, I would love to see the Stewart to get a larger allocation. I know Nistdale is about 2.5 times higher, but I'm sure it's all very accurate. Thank you, Liz.
Yes, it is, but it also includes, we also use some of our own internal figures, like free school meals and stuff like that?
Be happy to recirculate that. We can put that in the committee report just so that members see very clearly the basis of the calculation.
I think that's fair because it's not just based on population, so that's my understanding anyway. There's a number of factors come into it. John, you happy with that?
Yes, very happy, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, if anyone else wanting to speak? I think you're getting off lightly here, Liz. I'm not getting anybody coming in with any further requests to speak. So I'm going to move to recommendations, and that's 2.1, agree the Area Committee Discretionary Budget Strategic Framework set out in paragraphs 3, 4 and 3.5 in the Appendix 1, and 2.2, agree the timetable, paragraph 3.7 as set out in the paper. I don't think we need to put anything in here in the recommendations about the extra 200k, but we can just leave that in terms of the minutes. Okay, so everybody happy with that? Agreed. Okay, now I'm kind of just keeping going here because I did say 1 o'clock. So item 13, use of the council civic affairs budget. Purpose of the report is to agree the use of the council civic affairs budget for 2021 and 21-22. Liz again is here to answer any questions. Liz, have you any update on this, or are you happy to go to questions?
No, happy to go to questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, questions for Liz on this? Jim Dempster?
Just one, Chair, and it's not so much a question. I think the recommendations are great. The appendix shows what our thoughts are, but I would hate to see somebody turn up with a pressure washer and maybe clean the stone and blast the paint off. And I wonder if our local ward manager could somehow be a liaison or a contact, or have a central place where folks can get advice on what they propose to do, so that there's no, and I know health and safety advice is offered and what kind of materials to be used, but a pressure washer with clean water might still cause damage, and I would just hope that we would be ensuring that with the best intentions we don't actually go wrong and cause ourselves a problem. It's a great idea. It'll resonate with communities. It's very appropriate. We just want to protect our heritage and no accidentally cause damage if that can be avoided.
Yes, I think that's a very valid point. Thank you, Councillor Dempster. And yes, you're exactly right. That was the point about putting that as a specific element of the project outline, that we give advice, and indeed, you know, perhaps it might be about, the grant might be to provide them with the right cleaning materials to just ensure that our war memorials are restored in the proper way. Thank you.
Many thanks, Liz.
Jane, you want in?
Well, it was really just exactly, I had precisely the same view that Councillor Dempster had, and I was going to suggest it on page 145. One of the purposes, Liz, might be to to educate the public about high quality restoration. You know, that's one of the purposes that actually might go into this project. And I do absolutely endorse everybody's views about this being a good project. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. Thanks, Jane. One of the comment I would make to maybe at 2.3 in the recommendations that Liz would be remit to Liz actually to take this forward in conjunction with John and I and the Armed Forces champion and potentially his wider team, you know, the other 3 elected members who work alongside him. So I think just for transparency and for information to other members, Liz, we can probably circulate the outcome of any of these meetings to all the members, and then everybody knows what's happening, who to contact for advice, for example, and we certainly don't want to happen what happened to Rabi's statue at the in the town centre in Dumfries, and damage some of these really important monuments. So.
Yes, we'll certainly be communicating. Once the final arrangements have been agreed, we will certainly be communicating that very widely. So, yes, happy to do that for the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So in that case, then, I'm not seeing anybody else want to come in and speak. I'll move to recommendations, and that's 2.1 is to note the available budget of 10,500 for civic hospitality and support for the Lord Lieutenancies in 21-22. Agree the proposed use of the 2019-20, 2021-20 to 21 civic affairs budget underspend and Armed Forces reserves, paragraph 310 to 313 and the appendix. And then if the Wormwood Meadows project is agreed, remit to the Committee Planning and Engagement Manager in liaison with the Chair, Vice Chair of the Committee and the Armed Forces Champion to finalise arrangements. And again, we don't need to add to the recommendations, but Liz has agreed that we should circulate progress to all elected members for them to share with their constituents if they so wish. So are we agreed? 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3? Okay, so again, I'll take no comment or nothing adverse as agreement. So that's a recommendations agreement agreed for item 13. I'm minded just to keep going here. Item 14 is the Chair's notes. The Commission on Representation and Engagement Performance Monitoring and Development of New Arrangements for the Future report by Committee Planning Engagement Manager. So it's Liz again. Report to consider the performance monitoring of the Commission for Representation and Engagement, Protected Characteristics and Third Sector for 2021 and the development of new arrangements for the future. Liz, do you want to update your report or are you happy to go to questions?
No, perhaps just the only comment to highlight is that the last meeting of full council, the equalities outcomes for the council were agreed, and I think as the leader said in her opening remarks, that the fulfilment of the council's statutory duties simply would not be possible without the cooperation and involvement of the third sector organisations for particular equality groups. So I think this is very much about us taking forward the areas where the groups don't already have a particular forum to make their views known and to engage with our council. So it's very much about making sure that all our diversity groups have got an opportunity to engage. We're changing our procurement arrangements across the council, as I'm sure you know, and so the intention is that for the first 6 months or so of this commission that we continue our existing outcomes, and that we will bring you a report in October with any change to the procurement arrangements and the outcomes for the future years, which will take into account any differences because of COVID. Thank you.
Okay, Liz, thanks very much. Any questions for Liz? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands going up. So I'm going to move to recommendations. So that's 2.1, scrutinise the performance information for the Commission on Representation and Engagement, protected characteristics and their sector in 2020-21 and the improvements in people's lives being achieved, paragraph 3.2.3 and appendix 2. And then 2.2, agree the continuation of the existing outcomes to 31st October 2021 with a pro rata of the Commission budget for 21-22 paid to the Equality Partnership whilst the new outcomes are being developed by the commissioning group and commissioning arrangements are being developed by our council. That's paragraph 3.3, and that will be, it's not in the recommendations, but that will be reported to October committee. Is that right? Yeah, thanks Liz. So are we happy to agree 1 and 2.1, 2.2? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody the contrary, so that's them agreed. Thanks very much, Liz. So I'm just going to keep going at the moment. Item number 15 is Dromore Harbour, report by the Director. Provides members with the opportunity to consider the request from Kirkmaiden Community Harbour Trust to access the remaining funds within Dromore Harbour Council Reserve to support the continued development of Dromore Harbour. Stephen Herriot's available with us today to ask any questions. Stephen, anything to update, or are you happy to go to questions?
Nothing to update, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Stephen? Just give me an extra second or two, Stephen.
Chair, if I could speak. I'm trying to hit that button, it's not doing it.
Oh, Wally, we're just trying to exclude you, my man. Okay, on you come. Yeah.
I'll take the hint, Andy.
Yeah, go ahead, Wally.
I think it's a pretty straightforward report, and it does go back many years, and we can see in the report going back to 2007, 2010, and the Kirkmaiden Community Harbour Trust, they have been working closely with the council. We did establish that they did purchase and all the work that was entailed in that one, and the money's being granted, I think, for legal advice at the time. And it's the residue from that, and I think it was agreed some time ago, although I'm not sure if it was properly minuted. But nevertheless, I would hope that we can agree to the report we got before us today. Thanks, Stephen, for his work, and agree the recommendation. I would hope we could do that, and that would allow the Kirkmaiden Community Development Trust to get on with some of the work. There's still a lot of work needed on the harbour. And they've taken on a lot in terms of taking it on, and I would hope this will help them out with some of the work that's still needing done.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Wally. I'm not seeing anybody coming in the the contrary here. So I think we just agree the recommendation, take it forward. Are we happy with that? Okay, there's no dissent, so I'll take that as agreed. Stephen, thank you very much for the report. So the recommendation has been agreed. Thank you. I'm now moving on to item number 16, the Governance Assurance Statement report by Head of Governance and Assurance. Report seeks the committee's recommendations on issues for inclusion in the annual governance statement for 2021. I see it's Vlad is here to answer questions on this and to present the report. Vlad, is there any update you've got, or are you happy going to questions?
Just happy to go to questions. Nick's also here, who's assisted with the report. Hopefully he'll be able to help me out with any particular questions.
Brilliant, thanks. Sorry about that, Nick. I didn't mean to exclude you from the process. So have we any questions for Vlad or Nick? I think that's Jane Maitland. Jane?
I'm slightly reluctant to get between members and the loo and their lunch, but I'd better. Vlad, through you, Chairman, there are two small issues. I'm not absolutely certain, with respect to the governance assurance statement, what the balance is between saying we've got these particular policies in place and means of constructing a governance framework, as opposed to saying, and this is how we monitor compliance. Because I would suggest we're very strong on saying we've got all the most wonderful suggestions and arrangements in place that are visible for us to see, but we're perhaps not so absolutely assuring ourselves on how these are monitored. And with respect to the problems that we've had over the last year or so, 2 years. That's the first thing. And the second thing is a small point, but we really got to do something about it. As a small exercise to show you how sad I am, I Googled Dumfries Council Governance Assurance Statement. And do you know what? You can't find it. It's quite extraordinary. You go on to East Ayrshire, which I thought I would take as an example, and you type in East Ayrshire Governance Assurance Statement, and up it comes, first thing. Members will be amused to hear that what our search engine says, it says it's very simple to use, meaning, of course, that I'm an idiot because I can't find the assurance remarks and the assurance statement on it. So I think we've absolutely got to tackle that. I know we're doing that probably somewhere else, but it just is another indication that this is really not fit for purpose as it stands at the moment. But the substantive question is about the balance between compliance and the statement of strategies that we've got.
Vlad?
Yeah, through you, Chairman. In regards to the last point, first, I think that's absolutely something we can look to address. So I'll take that away as an action. In terms of the bigger question, which is it's more about the scrutiny role really that we carry out in terms of ensuring that our processes are what we require in terms of good governance, not just as Councillor Maitland's pointed out, that we have the right policies and procedures in place, but more importantly that we're actually properly scrutinising those processes and that we are assured that those processes meet the relevant principles of good governance is something that is part of the overall governance and assurance planning, and that's something we look to address through not just through this statement, but through wider methods, and also the Audit Risk and Scrutiny Committee plays a key role within that. So I don't know in terms of what specific assurance I can give within this particular statement to that effect, but I absolutely agree. I think it's all fine and good to have the right policies and procedures in place, but it's how you implement them and how you assure yourselves that they are being properly followed. I don't know if that quite answers Councillor Maitland's point, but I guess from my end, if I could give the assurance that we are looking at addressing some of these points through bigger reviews that we're carrying out, whether it's FPT, whether it's also the trunk roads, outcomes of that, and following up on any actions that I will be carrying out in terms of a general governance and assurance review for the whole organisation.
Right, so that's basically a root and branch review. You're talking about, Vlad, here, looking at every little part of the organisation to make sure that they're fulfilling the obligations that we have. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I'd be probably related to call it a root and branch review as such. I think there's been significant reviews that have been carried out so far, and we'll be taking we are taking significant actions in terms of addressing the relevant review outcomes. On top of that, I will be, as I go along, trying to improve the general governance and assurance processes, which includes looking at particular areas. Also, obviously, our internal audit play a key role within that in terms of properly looking at our processes, looking at any failures, and looking at lessons learned. So all of that will be carried out. We couldn't obviously, from my perspective anyways, look at everything as a whole, but what we can do is chip away at these things as we identify them, but also we can plan and we know where the main risks lie, so certainly we can focus on that, but also at the same time it's important that we have a particular signposting from members, and I think that's what this paper's trying to do, is in essence have any signposting that members think would be appropriate for us to look at and to concentrate on. We can start putting that within the overall governance statement, which then leads us to looking at the assurance processes and scrutiny of that.
Okay, Vlad, so I've got two councillors wanting to come in. So if I'm looking at the recommendation at 2.2, it's about recommendations to be included in the 2021 statement. Is that in tablets of stone, or are we able to amend that as we go through the process without coming back to get the whole thing agreed again? You know, is it a movable feast improvement as you find things not quite right? Just so I'm clear in my mind before I let the other speakers come in.
Yeah, so what we're looking is for recommendations in regards to the governance statement for 2021, and that once we have identified it, obviously we're going through this with various committees, and ultimately it's for the committees to then point us in the direction of their particular delegations that should be included, and then that will be thereafter included within that particular statement, and then we can start obviously the process again in terms of 2022. So in terms of, there is flexibility there to continue to improve, and any particular identified areas can be looked at again, but we'll go through this process again in not too distant future.
Thanks very much. That makes it a lot clearer for me. So I've got Adam, Willie, and then Dougie Campbell, and I think we'll move on to recommendations if we can. Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think my comments are probably not too dissimilar to what has been said. I'm particularly focused on recommendation 2.2 about the making recommendations for issues to be included. Because realistically, that's why this report is here, given the work of the FPT review. And just one thing in the list in 3.14, I didn't really feel that there had been a sort of horizon scanning of the potential governance issues that could be on the horizon. I just think in terms of, there's a report that earlier on in the agenda, but we're still to consider on the situation at ports. Obviously, there's going to be a whole lot of governance questions around that. The information that elected members receive, the reporting to elected members, how do we make decisions in a situation that's completely tied up in legislation, but obviously is a very important role for this council. So I think one thing I'd be quite keen to do is for that sort of wider horizon scanning as to, what could possibly come up over the next 12 months. And I think if that could be done between now and when this goes to the full council, that would be quite advantageous.
Okay, Vlad, you can take that forward, yep. That seems a reasonable request. Yep.
Yeah, I've noted that, yep.
Okay, so I've got Willie and then Dougie, and then we'll go to recommendations. Willie?
Thanks, Chair. And the report is quite fulsome. I'm looking at, what is referred to in the recommendations of 2.2, and it refers to us to 3.3 in terms of the ad hoc subcommittee role in development and approval of council's local code of corporate governance and annual governance statement. Then it goes on to refer us to, I think there's 3.6, and there's a number of bullet points there: midpoint review and updating the corporate plan, review of members' appointment to outside bodies, permanent arrangement agree for money to Novaza, democratic, legal and internal audit and risk services. And then 3.14, and I think that's about just less than 20 bullet points there. And some of them are interesting, like for the inquiry services updated, paperless committee pilot for all or to all elected members, when some of us still prefer to get the hard copy and to be able to read rather than just rely on a computer. And then standing orders update to provide for virtual participation. And some of us are hoping that with a relaxation there'll be an opening up. I'm really making points rather than questions, and it comes back to decisions. My question here is, in committees, any committee taking a decision, it obviously is their responsibility to execute that. But it's on the execution, what role does governance play to make sure that decisions are executed in the way that the committee has agreed? And where does this report back to members, to reference made earlier that, looking for the annual governance statement, that all the decisions taken that have been taken have been properly executed?
Willie, I think that last point is actually quite important, because I know the health board papers that I get, they have something very similar to what you're describing there, is that they have actions, actions were agreed, and then implementation and where they are in terms of the action, where they are in the road to completion. So I don't know if we do that on a departmental basis, but if we don't, it might be an idea, Vlad, to get some sort of template so that members can see at quick glance decisions they've taken in the past and how they're being actioned, and timescales and all that kind of stuff. I think that's quite a reasonable ask, actually.
Yes, through you, Chairman. Happy to take that forward with Nick in terms of maybe taking a view as to how best to present that, and whether that's something we're presenting again purely to communities, or is something that we can have wider. So I'll take that forward with Nick. In terms of I think that's a reasonable point in terms of actions and decisions. There is a process and a system in place for taking actions that officers need to take, but I'm not sure how that feeds back into the committee again. So again, I'll need to take a view on that once I speak to Nick as to how the system works, and see if we can implement that.
Thanks very much, Vlad. Okay, Dougie, and then I've got Ian Carruthers, and I'll definitely go into the recommendations after that. Okay, so Dougie.
Thanks, Chair. I think my question's already been answered by your clarification with Vlad in relation to recommendation 2.2. I was just looking at 3.3 and the various strategies plans that are listed. I noticed that the Climate Emergency Strategic Action Plan wasn't on that list, but if I understand correctly from what Vlad has said, that list will be updated, and obviously that would be something that should be included on that list.
Yeah, okay, Dougie, thanks. Ian?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not saying so much because of my role of Chair Audit Risk Scrutiny Committee, but I just clarity in regards to Wally's point, because I do think it's important. You and Vlad have already confirmed that is an important point, but Wally, are you saying that, okay, when it comes to decision, the decision making, so at this level, committee decision making, it's about the tracking, it's about how it's written down, the language that's being used, and also about whether it's compliant or non-compliance as we go forward. Is there what level of compliance and non-compliance with that particular decision? I just want to be clear on, because obviously we'll see this coming back to other Risk Scrutiny Committee. I just want to be clear on what starts being said by Wally, because it sounds like that to me.
Ian, I have to agree with you. That's what it sounded like to me as well. And I think, I don't want to speak for Vlad, but I think we accepted that was something that Vlad was going to look at, and probably as Chair of Audit and Risk Scrutiny Committee, Vlad, no doubt will talk to you about that. But
can I come back, Chair?
Yeah. Will quickly then? Yeah.
And very quickly. I just referred to 3.14 and how there's almost 20 bullet points. and I just made reference to a couple, and you know, like paperless committee pilot completed and to be rolled out to all elected members. Well, I still want a hard copy, so you know, it's an interpretation of a decision and how it's executed. Similar with the standing orders update to provide for virtual participation. Yeah, I'm hoping we're soon getting back to actually meeting, and we come to that. So it's all on what decisions are being taken, then it's the interpretation and the execution.
Yeah.
And so that we get a report back that this was a decision taken and it's been properly executed, and not by interpretation, but by, you know, whatever decision was taken by that committee. It's that whole process of seeing that that's been taken, and then there's a reporting back on an annual basis.
Yeah, if I'm picking you up right, Willie, it's the actual assurance that we need that everything's been done the way it should be done, I think, to paraphrase it. Yeah.
Absolutely, Chair.
Okay. Vlad, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned earlier, Chairman, what we look at is just consideration of the best process for doing that, and then report back to the relevant committees as to what we're proposing to take forward.
Right, okay, Vlad, thanks very much for that. Pauline's got a thing here, we need to roll out the tablets to be able to go totally paperless, and I think she's right. So I think that's another thing for another day. I'm not sure if you can take that forward for us, Vlad, to make sure that that's speeded up. Separate issue altogether. Right, so I'm going to move the recommendations of item 16, and that's 2.1, comment on the annual governance statement for 1920 in relation to the committee delegations, and 2.2, to make recommendations for issues to be included in the 2021 statement, drawing on the Directorate's actions in paragraphs 3.3, 3.6 and 3.14. And clearly, Vlad, you've got action points to take that forward as well. We don't need to include that in the recommendation. It's enough. It's in the recording, so we know where we are with that. Is everybody happy with that?
Chair, the only comment I would make is that if using the system or the process that you've just outlined, we're not being very open and transparent unless it's recorded clearly within the minute.
No, because we've not been a decision. We've asked Vlad to go away and look at it and bring something back to us, is what we've done. So it's no case of hiding anything, Ian. It's in full view of everybody, full hearing of everybody who wants to see that. I'm happy with the recommendations as such, but if you want to make a countering thing to that, you know, feel free. See, there's a hand up.
I think Nick's wanted to come in, but to me, it's we're referring this audit risk scrutiny committee to look at this as part of it signs off the annual governance statement, and that's what I'm saying. So it's already just leave it, and I've got every confidence that Vlad will pick this up. But for the sake of this committee, and that's why I'm saying I'll keep my powder dry today. It's not for me to be speaking actually in my current role to any degree, but I just think this committee has to be absolutely clear what it's saying to the audit risk scrutiny committee and full council thereafter.
Yeah, that'll be covered in the minutes, Ian, would be my understanding. But whose hands up? Can you see? Nick, can you see who it is?
It's Nick.
Is
yeah,
it Nick?
it is mine, Chair. Just thought I could provide some clarity for members, if you wish, on the topic of actions, because we are recording now in the system when we prepare the minutes actions, and they're being allocated to officers via the system that we use to create agendas, etc. Modern Gov. So there will be further developments in how we open that up so that everyone can see the actions that have been agreed and progress on them. I'm not sure whether that was what Derek was going to come in to comment on, but I thought I'd offer that up to help members see what action's being taken on that.
Yeah, Derek, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just to reassure all members that this is a really important point, because this becomes the fundamental issue, which is how do I know as a member that the decisions I've taken have been implemented. So it's to assure you that now with the appointment of the new head of governance and assurance, that is the very question that we are now in the process of actioning to ensure that all decisions can be publicly tracked. They'll be on the website. Any member of the public wishing to access the system will see not just the decisions taken, but they will see the action note attached to each of these decisions. And I think fundamentally that ensures the openness and transparency that we all strive for as members and officers, and is fundamentally about that public accountability. So it's an acknowledgement that that's an area for improvement. The improvement action's been identified, and over the next year you will see a significant improvements in relation to the recording of decisions in the public forum. Thanks, Chairman.
Thanks for that clarity, Derek. Given that, Ian, I'm moving it back to recommendations, and I'm not seeing anybody with a contra view at this moment in time.
So the only point I would say, if you look at recommendation 2.2, it says make recommendations for issues to be included. And if you're saying that they have been captured by Vlad and Nick, so to speak, and they'll be incorporated in the minutes, then I think it covers it. Right, okay, that's fine, Ian. Thanks for that. So you be assured that I'll make sure that they're covered in the minutes, Ian. Okay. So with that in mind, are we happy to agree 2.1 or 2.2? Yeah, okay, I'm hearing nothing in there. The only thing, Nick, sorry, Vlad or Nick, I'm picking up here, the number of members are still very unhappy about having to go paperless. They're not comfortable with it. So I think we'll need to have a further discussion down the line here on personal preference here. Some people really struggle with screens, reading on screens and small screens, and yeah. So, but that's, I think, for another day. It was a different decision, isn't it? Yeah. So, Vlad, thanks very much. Nick, thank you for that. So I agree with these recommendations. I would go to suggest now we take a break now. That's just after 1:10. Well, we've got that paper to read that came out, and have lunch and comfort break. So can we reconvene, let's say 20 to 2? Is that okay with everybody? That'll give you sufficient time to powder your nose, eat your lunch, and read the paper before we come back to it, and we'll cover that late paper first, and then we'll go back to the agenda proper after that. Okay, so thanks just now, and we'll see you all in about half an hour. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to this meeting of the Communities Committee, the Dumfries Galloway Council. Nick, can you give me an updated sediment to make sure that we're quoted, please?
Just take me a second, Chair, to review the numbers.
Yeah, thank you.
We're certainly core, Chair. There's no difficulty with that.
Okay, then. So you have a note of who's in the meeting and who isn't? Yeah.
Yes, I can see the names of who's currently in the meeting.
Sorry about that, folks. Somebody picks a really good time to come on. On my mobile. Right. Okay, so let's move on to the agenda. We're going to go back into item number 9, the Port Health Authority report by Director, and we've got Sandra Hartness with us today to answer questions. That just to, everyone should now have had a chance to have read the new updated report. It provides us with the progress towards implementing the Council's forthcoming responsibilities as a Port Health Authority. An updated appendix previously circulated to all members, due to updated timelines and the expected implementation date provided by the Scottish Government. If the resource plan is approved at Communities Committee today, a report will be submitted to Finance or FPT on the 13th of April to seek financial approval. As I say, Sandra's here to answer any questions. Sandra, is there any last minute updates you'd like to give us, or are you happy going to questions?
I'm happy to go to questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. Right, so look for questions for Sandra on the report. Adam.
Thanks, Chair. Just one thing that it's not clear to me in terms of Appendix 3 is very, very helpful, but it's not clear to me actually what is the resource that this council is going to have to contribute into these arrangements. My reading of the report was that essentially our lobbying position was that the Scottish Government would cover the vast majority of the costs indicated in this indicative resource plan figures. So I'm just wondering if we could get that clarified, because that just wasn't clear to me at all within this report.
We are seeking agreement from Scottish Government with the resource plan that they will do that, so that I think members have been clear all along with this process that the council had not to be out of pocket with this, and that any additional costs that were not met with future income would be covered by Scottish Government. So that's why the resource plan has put that to them, that they would cover the costs, and we would in fact be looking for them to mitigate against any shortfall in future years as well.
So sorry, Chair, if I can come in. So are we essentially saying that our lobbying position is that actually the council shouldn't need to input any costs to this?
That is our position, that we would be seeking that there would be no additional cost to be input by the council.
Sandra, just maybe to help clarify this. So what is our legal position as a local authority in this matter? Does it fall on local authorities, and is it solely the Scottish Government, or is there still negotiations going on with the UK Government?
There are still negotiations going on at UK and Scottish Government level, and they have still to be, decisions have still to be made. There is a statutory duty put on the local authority by virtue of the fact that we now have a border control post that's been designated by Scottish Government. And obviously we will need to fulfil those statutory duties. The law and the guidance from UK government level is that we should be able to be cost neutral, and therefore it would be up to us to set our fees in future years to cover the level of expenditure that we anticipate. And that should be doable. There's a minimum level of fee that all border control posts must charge. So there wouldn't be a huge variation in the level of the fees, but we could increase the fees to whatever level we needed to do to make sure it covered our costs.
Okay then, so I think picking up on what Adam was saying there, so what we're looking is somebody to underwrite the first year until we get our system up and running, and then we then fall in line with Holyhead, Dover, and be self-funding. Is that the case?
We would be anticipating being able to be self-funding. However, if we did in fact incur a shortfall, we would be seeking Scottish Government agreement that they would cover any shortfall in future years. It's perfectly conceivable that we should be able to bring in sufficient resource to cover our costs, but we would be looking first of all to set up a budget reserve so that we could buffer from one year to the next, and we would then know what our budget for the following year would be from our current year's income. But we would be asking Scottish Government to meet any shortfall in future years.
Okay, yeah, and that's clearly the position of Council at the time, and when it comes to that, we'll take a position on. Yeah, so the current position is to lobby to get as much as we can at this moment in time, and to get the first year at least funded so that we can get our processes up and running. Is that a fair assessment of where we are?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Adam, are you comfortable with that? Or does that answer your question?
Yes, largely, yep.
Right, okay, thank you. Willie, you want in?
I'm not sure if it answers the question, but I'll come to that in a minute, because I think we need to go back one. And thanks for the report, Sandra, the outlines all within the appendices. But in 3.2, we do note that in April 2021, it was expected GP would commence in April 21 with the Cairnline checks. That has now been put back to October 2021 and only limited, and then further in January of 2022. And when we look at the letter from government, local authority, border control, post readiness, and in the first sentence it says the Scottish Government are currently working on border control post readiness. Now, we as a council have got a position, and we've put that position forward in terms of the preferred site for a border control point being the East Pier in Stranraer. And I've spoken to the EU, or who was the EU Minister, Mike Russell, and he came up with, I think it was either 5 or 6 sites, all within a 9-mile radius that they are looking at. Now, if we're moving and we take what they're saying in moving towards a readiness, then we're almost, well, we're into April, coming almost to the halfway in April. So October isn't that far away in terms of border control. So what is the readiness, and are they any closer to identifying the site, and where will this be? Because I've noticed activity on the East Pier, and Stena has made it clear that they want to use the East Pier to facilitate hauliers in leaving their wagons there, or their trailers rather, for their roll-on, roll-off service. And we need to be discussing with them if that is the case for our preferred site. And I think the other site is, up at the industrial estate at Commerce Road. So we need to, how far on are we down the road in terms of the Scottish Government's readiness to a preferred site? And I would hope we could get that sooner rather than later for all the works that would possibly be required. The next point is, and Adam touched on it, is if we look at Appendix 3 and we see number of staff recruited, and this is in training 5, and then item 2, document checks 8, then 6, moving on to 18, with a total of 37. Does this include ancillary staff? There is to be a building, then that building has to be maintained. And would that include ancillary staff alongside this? Because that would be a cost, or whether this will be something contracted out and it would be picked up with the Scottish Government on an ongoing basis. So it's no clear in terms of the number of staff recruited. And when I did put that to the Minister, he made it clear that would be at no cost to the Council. So I think we need to get clarification on that. There's still a lot of uncertainty in the documents that we've got, and yet time is marching on, and we will soon be at October 2021, and we still don't know what's happening. Whether that's with the Scottish Government or the UK Government, I don't know. Maybe you could tell us, Sandra.
Thanks, Councillor Scobie, and through the chair. The Port Health Authority duties that we have come with Cairnryan being designated as a border control post, not the actual infrastructure of the border control post. So I'm afraid there's nothing in my report at all to cover the infrastructure, because that's not the remit of the Port Health Authority, and I've not actually been involved in the discussions that council officers have been having with Scottish Government. The border control post is purely a Scottish Government remit, and the Port Health Authority will work within those buildings when they eventually come into being. So I'm afraid I'm not able to comment at all on that question, Councillor Scobie. However, we will, because Cairnryan has been designated as a border control post in essence, legally, albeit there is no infrastructure, we will have these duties that have been outlined. So we will be obliged come the 1st of October, unless the date changes, but we will, as things stand, be obliged to carry out these duties from that date. And there will just be documentary checks. So if there is no infrastructure, because the documentary checks, they will be done just from our Stranraer office. We don't actually require a building as such, so that won't be a problem. We'll be able to get started. And in terms of the ancillary staff at the border control post, the final page of the resource plan, the draft resource plan, does actually, in the final box, any additional information. We have actually been clear that the staffing levels that we have indicated do not include any facilities management staff, for example, cleaning, security, loading, IT support. These would all be provided by Scottish Government and would not be part of the Council's remit as a Port Health Authority.
Could I come back, Andy? Hello?
I've muted myself, Willie, sorry. Yes, certainly come back. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks for your candidness, Sandra. And I think it's either for this committee or RRR or whatever committee it is, but I think we do need to push a lot harder to get total clarification, because there's a lot of uncertainty here in terms of the infrastructure that you allude to, Sandra. And facility management, the whole thing needs to be looked at, and an unequivocal assurance from Scottish Government that if that is the case, then that they would pick up that cost, because it's not included, as you rightly say, in the Appendix 3. That this is purely, and that's working from our own structures, from our own council offices. But my understanding is that they are looking at premises, facilities to provide the service, not only because I don't think any of the two ports have got the capacity, the space to locate there. And I come back to saying that that's where the Minister came in and said there was 5 or 6 places that they were looking at. I think we need, given the time we're at, I think we need clarity in that, Chair. Sandra's been very candid, and it's for us to find out just where they are in their negotiations with the premises as well, and stuff, and whether we think there's enough there. Obviously, Sandra would indicate there that there would be enough in the for checking purposes.
Okay, well, I've got the message, but I think Sandra was quite clear. That's not part of the remit of this report today. That's for another place and someone else. But I do understand why you've got it onto the on the recording. So I've got 2 more questions. One from Jane and then Rob wants in. Jane first and then Rob.
Thanks, Andy. Sandra, thank you very much indeed for your report. I'm just curious about Appendix 2. And I wonder if you can help us. Who would have thought that Brexit would have us solemnly discussing Chinese plastic kitchenware imports, which are very specifically listed? I find this really quite extraordinary. Can you explain why they've been picked out as a particular item, apart from anything else? Do we genuinely have more of these than anything else going through Kenran?
Thanks, Councillor Maitland, and through the chair. Plastic kitchenware from China has been an import check for the GB and UK and EU, in fact, for some time. I think it stems back to the nuclear power station. I might be wrong. Certainly there was an issue with plastic Chinaware and kitchenware from China having a level of contamination of toxic chemicals at some point in the past, and therefore there was a programme of sampling and checks, which I think were EU-wide when that was introduced. So it's not that we specifically think that we have an issue coming through Cairnryan of plastic kitchenware, but that is on the list of things that we would potentially have to look out for in consignments. I would be surprised if there was much coming from China through that channel, but it is part of the remit and it could potentially come through and would require us to carry out the regulatory checks.
Understood. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Rob's withdrawn his request to speak. Has been covered apparently. Anyone else? Just give everybody a chance to unmute or put their hand up or say something. No, it looks as though I'm not getting any further requests to speak, Sandra. So we'll move to recommendations. So we're asked to note the updated timeline for the introduction of import checks at Cairnryan and the delay in submitting a resource plan set out in different paragraphs and Appendix 1. Then we're asked to consider and agree the draft resource plan and indicative figures set to paragraph 3, 4, 3, 5 in Appendices 2 and 3 for submission to the Scottish Government. And I think, right, okay, so then we've got then consider and agree the mitigations against financial risk and agree to a further update being presented to this committee for consideration and agreement of proposed fees and charges set out in paragraph 3.7.
Be in touch. I'll need it. Andy, can I just speak on 2.4?
Yes, Willie, quickly, yeah.
Yeah, quickly, and just on what it says, agree a further update. Just to what I was saying, that I think we need a broader report in terms of the whole resources that would be required, the facilities that could be, and we should ask for an update on that to be included in the report. And I believe it should come to communities. So I think we need that given the October date and then further controls coming in January. So we do need some clarity on that. I would ask that we include that in 2.4, that we get a broader report on all implications, whatever word you want to use, Chair.
Can I use the words within the delegations of the Communities Committee? A broader report within all the delegations of the Communities Committee, because some of the things that might be out with the delegations for communities. I need to double check with Vlad and that team first to make sure, and the director. So I'm happy to refer that up, for us to include in that update the broader delegated functions of the Communities Committee to come back to Communities Committee. And you're absolutely right, Willie, I think then we should marry them all together, and probably that would go to full council or the 3R committee, whichever is appropriate. Would that be acceptable to you?
You've got the cover for the words, Andy. You've got it spot on. Thank
you very much, Willie. So with that slight amendment to 2.4, so the updates on the broader delegations of committee, delegations of communities committee be included for consideration agreement, along with the proposed fees and charges and any other obligations it places on us, I think is a sensible way forward. Are we all happy with that? Yeah. Okay, then in that case, we'll take as read that we've agreed the recommendations 2.1 and 2.4, and that 2.4 with that slight amendment. Sandra, thank you very much for your time, and I'm sorry to keep you hanging about so long, but it was important that members had a real opportunity to actually take it all in before they ask questions, because it is obviously a very serious issue. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you again, no doubt. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to item number 17, and that's the Ad hoc Waste Collection, Treatment and Disposal Subcommittee. The report asks members to agree the size and remit of the Ad hoc Waste Collection, Treatment and Disposal Subcommittee. Nick is with us to take us through the process here, and if there's any questions. Nick, have you got anything you want to add to this, or are you happy just to go to questions?
Nothing specifically to add, Chair. I think the thing remaining to be done is simply to agree the size of the subcommittee, assuming that.
Yeah, it's quite a simple remit, isn't it? So I think to cut to the quick here, I'd be suggesting that we should go with 11, because that mirrors some of the other subcommittees we've got in place and allows a fairer share across the council membership of political hues and colours, whatever you want to call it. So has anybody else got a view on that? No, there's nobody coming in, so I'm happy to move that we agree the size and the remit as the size at 11 and the remit as set out in the paragraphs, and leave it to the political group leaders to designate which members of their group who are sitting on the Communities Committee will fill the places. Are we comfortable with that? Okay, I'm taking that silence as agreement in this occasion. So that's agreed. Nick, thanks very much. Yeah, it's was that Councillor Hall, right? Okay, that's Jane. Tell me who it is. Okay, so that's item 17. Complete. Agree the recommendations on the size at 11. Okay, and remit to the political leads in each political party to nominate from within the Communities Committee their representation on that subcommittee. Okay, so we'll now on to the final item of the day, agenda item 18, licensing of sexual entertainment venues, Civic Government Scotland Act 1982. I nearly said 1892 there. Report by Head of Governance and Assurance. The report updates members on responses received to a public consultation which was carried out from the 7th of February 2020 to the 7th of April 2020, seeking views as to whether sexual entertainment venues or SEVs should be licensed in Dumfries and Galloway, and to note the next steps in the process. Caroline Traynor is and Vlad are with us to take us through any questions. And I think Caroline, we just need to stress to members of the committee that we're not making a decision about anything today. We're just noting what the legal process is and how we're working our way through that process. Is there anything you'd like to add, either Vlad or Caroline, to that?
Thank you, Chair. Just to state that clearly the consultation took place last year, a year ago, from February to April 2020, and the reason for the delay, for that 1 year delay in bringing this to yourselves, is of course for reasons relating to coronavirus and the effect that the COVID year has had on the licensing team. So this has been sitting on a back burner. And of course now it's brought before yourselves today for determination. Thank you. Okay, so just so we're absolutely clear, Caroline, we've been asked to look at the reports, consider the responses that the public have put in, and then, well, just basically note their responses and then note the next steps. That's correct, Chair, yes. And I think I'm taking my homework that you gave me seriously, in that we don't make any comment on whether, because that could lead to challenge later. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct, Chair. I mean, this is clearly going to be quite a long, sort of protracted process. The idea is that today you're just being asked to consider the responses received to that public consultation that took place over a year ago, and just to note the next steps in the process, which are generally detailed at paragraph 3.13. A report will come before yourselves in June, where you'll be asked to undertake a few, some substantive determinations, but today it's just a procedural report. Thank you. Thanks very much, Caroline. Have we any questions for Caroline or Vlad? I've not seen any hands coming up or anybody in the comments wanting to speak. I'll just give them an extra few seconds in case they're having technical problems. Okay, right. So I'm taking from this there's no one got any questions for you, Caroline, or for Vlad on this. So I'm going to move to the recommendations, and very basically it's to consider the responses which members have the chance to read and look at of the public consultation, and then note the next steps of the process of licensed sexual entertainment venues, and obviously there'll be another report coming back as we work our way through this process. Everybody happy with that? Again, I'll give them a couple of minutes just to make sure. Now, I'm not getting anybody coming in with any contrary, so in the absence of any contrary position, I'm taking it that the recommendations are agreed. Caroline, thanks very much, and I'm sorry I've kept you hanging on all day, but yes, for the very last thing, so thanks very much for that, and thanks, Vlad. So that's the recommendations. 2.1 and 2.2 are agreed. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, Caroline. Thank you. And that moves us on then to AOCB. I've got none deemed urgent, so it just leaves me with the job of saying thanks very much once again for the professional way that we've carried out business today, and thank everyone for their forbearance. Thanks very much, and goodbye everybody, and have a nice rest of the weekend. Right, bye.